Part 52. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 522. After Field fell unconscious, he was taken to an abandoned warehouse. He slowly woke up from the operating table, looked at the familiar figure in front of him, and asked, "What am I doing?" "Welcome back, comrade." The familiar face held his body with a smile and said, "Don't get up in a hurry." Field said, "I." His memory became blurred, and it seemed to be confused, and multiple memories appeared in his mind. The man comforted, "It will be fine after a while." Field took a deep breath and nodded. After a few minutes, he finally sorted out his memory and said, "Afresca, what should we do next?" When the man heard the other party call out his pseudonym, he knew that the operation was successful, so he told the other party the organization's next plan. 24 hours after the attack, both the FBC and the FBI found nothing and did not find any trace of Field. In the conference room of the FBC headquarters, the two sides met to discuss the current situation. After all, Field was only there to assist in the investigation, so the FBI still had to give the FBC an explanation. The head of the FBI agent is Claire's old acquaintance, Roman. He is usually responsible for protecting and monitoring Shirley, but Shirley does not go out every day, so he has work to do at other times. And the X organization is also worried that Roman will develop a desire to protect cute creatures if he protects Shirley for a long time, so he uses other tasks to distract his attention. Roman's job this time is just to communicate with Morgan and investigate the person in charge of Field. The real person in charge is now dealing with the attack in a panic. Roman ignored the low pressure in the room and said, "According to our investigation, the target was escorted to a safe house by our agents for protection after the attack. But before our support arrived, the agent was attacked and killed by a fake FBI agent, and Field was taken away by these people." Morgan, who exuded dissatisfaction, said, "The key, is there a traitor in your FBI? There must be a procedure for confirming each other's identities between agents, so unless the intelligence is leaked, the enemy cannot succeed in impersonation." Roman shook his head. "It's not clear yet." He took out the photos in his briefcase and pushed them in front of Morgan, taking the initiative of the conversation into his own hands. "These two attackers are active agents of the FBC, Commander Morgan. Do you have anything to say?" Morgan did not deny it directly, but picked up the photos and looked at them. "If you can't recognize them, you can also go and confirm them first." "I will do it without you saying it." Morgan called the secretary to confirm whether the person in the photo was an FBC agent, and then he looked at Roman and said, "Are you suspecting that I killed someone to silence him?" Roman's expression did not change, and he did not look away. "Originally, there was no such thing, but Commander, you suspected that we had a traitor before, and it seemed that you wanted to lead the problem to us. Are you guilty?" Morgan ignored the other party's sarcasm and said, "Humph, how do I know if our agents were attacked and sacrificed by your FBI, and then blamed them?" Although Roman's status and power were not as good as Morgan's, he had the support of the X organization, so he was not afraid of the other party at all. He said, "There were many witnesses at the scene. Speaking of this, Commander, you should thank us. If we hadn't blocked the news, your FBC wouldn't have to investigate next, and the public would have directly identified you as a funder of a bioterrorist organization. Although the public now knows that a gunfight took place, they don't know the details, let alone that there were FBC agents among those who participated in the attack." When Morgan heard this, his face twitched and he didn't say anything. He also knew that there was a traitor in his organization, otherwise how could the Greyhound organization confirm that Field was the one who discussed funding with them? Those two agents were probably the traitors in his organization. But he couldn't say this as an excuse, otherwise the other party would definitely ask how he knew there was a traitor. Roman noticed a slight change on the other party's face, and was about to take advantage of the victory to pursue, but Morgan's secretary just came back and interrupted the conversation. The secretary whispered a few words in the commander's ear, and then followed his instructions and left the room again. Although Morgan had expected it in his heart, when he heard the conclusion that the two people in the photo were FBC agents, the wrinkles on his face became more obvious. His eyes returned to Roman again, and he said, "I don't know why the two FBC agents are here. According to the investigation, they have no mission and are on vacation. It is precisely because their subordinates are on vacation that the FBC knows nothing about the whereabouts of the two." Roman did not say whether he believed it or not, and concluded, "Does that mean you don't have any evidence to clear your suspicion?" Morgan would not admit this, that would basically be a confession. So he asked back, "Didn't you check the two people's mobile phones? Those two people are very professional, they don't carry any communication equipment. Their mobile phones can't be located. How could the FBI forget about the mobile phone, but these two people have nothing else except pistols and bullets? Now the situation of the FBC is getting worse and worse, as if a huge spider web is covering them." Morgan couldn't help but regret that he underestimated the Greyhound organization and let the other party get the handle, which led to a series of subsequent troubles. Roman looked at Morgan, who didn't say a word, and sneered in his heart. FBC was supposed to be the sharp blade of the lighthouse state, monopolizing the entire NATO's anti-biochemical business, so that the lighthouse state could legally interfere in the internal affairs of its younger brother, etc. Unexpectedly, Morgan, known as the Silver Fox, would bring the FBC to such a point, which greatly disappointed the X-organization. He couldn't help but feel that he should have directly expanded and reorganized the Red Claws and let the younger Samus serve as the commander of the FBC. Morgan was too old, his thinking was rigid and stubborn, so when he faced the biochemical crisis in the early stage, his purpose of action was always to fight for power and want to firmly control the FBC in his hands. As a result, he controlled the entire organization as he wished. But during this period, the reputation of the FBC in the field of anti-biohazard was surpassed by the BSAA, which had not yet developed. These were all Roman's thoughts, but he did not say them out loud. The matter was done, and he said these things only after the fact. The same was true for the FBC agents' involvement in the attack. Apart from this fact, the FBI had no other evidence to prove that the FBC wanted to kill people and silence them, so there was no point in discussing this matter. But Roman had no choice, because his task was to put the blame for the attack on the FBC, so he could only continue the topic around the issue of the FBC agent. Morgan sorted out his mood, listened carefully to the other party's words, and prepared for the next round of rebuttal. Morgan and Roman were not procrastinators, and the two of them had a verbal confrontation, neither of them gave in, and the meeting came to an end. It was not that they reached an agreement, but that both sides refused to give in, so both sides decided to temporarily suspend this meaningless meeting and collect intelligence first. At this moment, the secretary and the FBI agent entered the room at the same time. "The Minister of the Interior is back. The target is back." The two said the news in unison. Morgan and Roman were very surprised and stood up to find Field. At this time, Field was in good condition. Although he had many wounds all over his body and was covered in dust and dirt, he did not have any particularly serious wounds and looked quite energetic. "Weren't you captured?" Roman would not show mercy to a man and asked about the situation directly. Field was in the medical room, and the doctor treated the wound on his back. Hearing Roman's words, he replied, "They locked me in an abandoned warehouse. I found an opportunity to knock out the person guarding me and then escaped." Without waiting for the other party to ask, Field immediately told the address of the warehouse. Roman was not polite either, and directly reported the matter to the person in charge and asked him to send someone to investigate the warehouse. Then he continued to ask, "Didn't the enemy notice that you ran away?" Field said with lingering fear, "I hid nearby, and the enemy immediately ran out to chase me after I disappeared. I played a time difference and successfully avoided them and escaped back successfully. The enemy didn't expect that he didn't run far after breaking free, and there was no closed-circuit television in the warehouse, so they directly dispersed to chase Field and just passed him by. Roman silently said, "Shit luck." Field didn't pay attention, turned his head and said to Morgan, "I eavesdropped on their conversation. The person who attacked me is a member of the Greyhound organization." Roman snorted, "You don't want to clear the FBC suspicion with just one sentence, right?" Field glared and said loudly, "That FBC agent is the insider." He naturally knew the reason why the other party said this. He must have found that there was an FBC among the attackers. Roman replied, "You should tell our person in charge. After the doctor treats the wound, please come with us again." "No. You FBI can't protect me at all. You have a traitor in your ranks too. The person who arrested me can answer your code." Field chuckled and said, "You can't make the decision on this matter." Morgan said, "You have to give a safe plan, right? Do you want to repeat the same mistake?" Field called the person in charge first. Then he looked at Morgan and the others and said, "We will ask other departments to pick up this time. No one will know who is in charge except the person in charge." Morgan was about to refute when the secretary knocked on the door again. He came in and shouted, "Commander, something bad has happened." "What's the point of being so flustered?" Morgan didn't want his men to lose face in front of the FBI, so he shouted angrily. He waited until the other party calmed down before asking, "What happened?" The secretary said, "Someone broke the news to the reporter, saying that one of the people who attacked the FBI was an FBC agent." "What?" Hisfield stood up suddenly and pulled the wound. The doctor pushed him back and said, "Don't move, the wound almost tore open." Morgan asked Roman, "Explain the situation to me." Roman was thinking in his heart whether this was a conspiracy of the Greyhound organization. Hearing Morgan's request, he knew that this was a good time to raise the price. He smiled and said, "Okay, but Field must follow our people and leave through the back door now." He wanted to take this opportunity to divert the enemy's attention and take Field away. Roman and Morgan went to explain to the reporters who had gathered while reconciling their statements. Of course, Roman would not make a conclusion on this matter. After all, he also did not know the specific situation now. But it was precisely because someone broke the news that he decided to help the FBC organization, because this was a conspiracy against the FBC no matter how you look at it. Field had no other choice. He followed another FBI agent out of the back door of the FBC headquarters building before his wounds were treated. This time Field came to the FBI branch smoothly. As a result, the interrogator was shocked as soon as the interrogation began. Because Field directly admitted that he had contact with the Greyhound organization and funded them, and even told their FBC plan against the BSAA. But he did not admit that he had ever instructed the Greyhound organization to create any biochemical crisis. The agents who heard these words looked at each other, said "Wait a minute," and left the interrogation room. They had no authority to deal with such issues, so they could only report it immediately and let their superiors make a decision. This explosive news spread all the way to the head of the FBI and President Seymour, and finally to Simmons' ears. "What do we do with what Field said?" The FBI director was very cunning and immediately threw the hot potato away at the beginning of the meeting. President Seymour did not answer, but looked at Simmons, the security consultant of the Lighthouse Country, hoping that the other party could provide a method. Simmons, who had been suffering from single-mindedness before, is in a good mental state now and has recovered from the disease. He did not give up pursuing Ada, but one day when he went to wash his face, he looked at his decadent self in the mirror and figured it out. In this state, he was not worthy of the woman he dreamed of, so he cheered up again and thought seriously about getting Ada. Back to Field's self-exposure, Simmons took over and said, "Have those people who pretended to be FBI confirmed their identities? How did they know the contact code?" He was worried that the existence of an insider would cause Field's words to be leaked. The FBI would also be in trouble at that time, and the lighthouse country would easily lose the initiative of the investigation. The FBI director said with some guilt, "The identity cannot be confirmed. The person who knew the code has been controlled and is under investigation, but there is no result yet." President Seymour said, "If this matter is exposed, will it affect the image of our country? Although the FBC is nominally an organization affiliated with NATO, it is basically deeply bound to us, and it will definitely have an impact." Simmons agreed with the FBI director's words. He attached great importance to this point and was already thinking about how to cut off the FBC in his heart. He quickly thought of several plans to break the silence in the room. In the current situation, we can either bet that the insider did not receive the information, or we can kill the person directly and put the blame on the Greyhound organization, so that there will be no evidence. FBC. Simmons said this, but the FBI will be responsible for the execution, so the director's face showed hesitation. "Tell Morgan what Field said exactly, and he will understand." President Seymour asked, "What other methods? I am now skeptical about the FBI's confidentiality." The FBI director wiped his sweat with an embarrassed look. Simmons said, "Let us be the messenger of justice and send the FBC to the grave personally." He had received an interesting intelligence before. The content is that O'Brien of BSAA intends to train Luo Guang as the successor of his own organization. Although BSAA is not O'Brien's one-man show, Simmons feels that with the support of the X organization behind him, Luo Guang's promotion is a foregone conclusion. At that time, the BSAA organization will naturally be under the control of the X organization. The BSAA is an organization under the United Nations, which allows the X organization to reach out further and is a better choice than the FBC. In this way, the value of the FBC to the X organization has been reduced a lot. President Seymour does not have much good feelings towards the FBC organization, and this organization was left by the previous president, which makes him even more dissatisfied. Now he also has his own anti-biochemical organization DSO, thinking that this may be an opportunity for expansion. Except for the FBI director who only wants to throw away the hot potato as soon as possible, the other two have their own ulterior motives and are calculating how to maximize their benefits. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 523. President Seymour thought the second plan was better than the first, but he did not express his thoughts immediately. He wanted to know more and asked, "By the way, did Field say why he admitted these things?" As Morgan said at the press conference, the Greyhound organization's information cannot confirm that he did such things. "My men reported it immediately after hearing what the other party said, without asking at all." Simmons frowned and said, "Didn't they even confirm the authenticity of this statement? If Field was lying, wouldn't they have discussed it in vain and wasted time?" The FBI director shook his head and said, "They used multiple polygraphs throughout the process, so this is definitely not false. Field said he chose to surrender because Morgan sent people to hunt him down. These polygraphs are much more advanced than those in the police station, and the price has increased several times, so they are naturally more accurate." Simmons reviewed the whole thing from beginning to end and said, "What is the enemy's goal? To disband the F.B.C. But this idea is too naive. As long as the countries disagree, the people's protests will be useless. When a biochemical crisis occurs, the countries force the FBC to solve it, and the people can only shut up and wait for the FBC to save them. On the surface, it is like this, but it is unclear what the real goal is." The FBI director said, "Nonsense." President Seymour said, "Are you worried that we have fallen into the enemy's trap? Doing something that will make the relatives sad and the enemies happy?" Simmons nodded. Someone knocked on the door and came in. After distributing the latest intelligence to the three people, he retreated. Everyone was silent. After checking the intelligence, there was only the sound of paper turning pages in the president's office. This intelligence is about the news about Morgan and Roman's joint speech. There is not much effective content. What the two said were just words to evade reporters. Roman said that the matter was still under investigation, and Morgan directly said that those people were all insiders, and this was a conspiracy against the FBC. Someone broke the news that FBC agents participated in the attack. Is this the enemy threatening us? The FBI director felt that there was a lot of stuff in this. The enemy threatened the FBI that if they did not make Field's words public, they would continue to break the news. The FBI would also be involved in trouble at that time. The FBI director now also thinks that Simmons's second plan is good. Simmons was thinking about a question in his mind at this time. Is the Greyhound organization so strong? What the enemy is doing now is like a professional intelligence organization. If the Greyhound organization is not so strong, could it be another powerful organization behind it? President Seymour suddenly made a decision: let the FBI announce the investigation and then arrest Morgan for investigation. Although Field said a lot of explosive news, one person's testimony is not enough, and various evidences are needed to form a complete and closed data chain. Simmons did not raise any objections and remained silent. Compared with the survival of the FBC, he cares more about how to solve the Greyhound organization and dig out the truth of the incident. After all, the FBC organization was established under the leadership of their lighthouse country, and what the Greyhound organization is doing now is to slap the lighthouse country in the face. In this case, the X organization will naturally take action. Arresting an FBC commander cannot be so casual, the procedure must be perfect. So after Roman finished his original task, he only received the task of monitoring Morgan and ensuring that he stayed at the headquarters, and did not let him arrest Morgan directly. In his office, Morgan looked at Roman, who was drinking tea, and said, "What do you FBI mean?" Roman did not answer. His task had just been completed, so he drank tea so calmly. The FBI agent who came with the arrest warrant took over the conversation. According to Field's testimony, you are suspected of participating in the funding of biological and chemical terrorist organizations. Please go back with us to investigate. As for the plan against the BSAA, after all, it has not officially started, so it does not constitute a reason for arrest. Morgan's eyes widened, and he was stunned. Although human nature cannot stand the test, and Field cannot be loyal forever, the other party cannot betray him in this situation. Is this the FBI's plan, just to deceive him? Just as he thought so, the FBI agent's next words successfully broke his defense. If you think we are trying to trick you, then we don't mind talking about your plan against BSAA. Morgan only discussed this plan with Field, and no insider on either side could know about it. In order to save face, Morgan did not wear handcuffs. Instead, other FBI stood in all directions like bodyguards to protect him and got into the F.B.C's own car. In the headquarters building, an FBC agent secretly saw the situation, sent a message to someone thousands of miles away, and then went back to work. Morgan went to the FBI headquarters in Langley, Virginia, under the escort of the FBI. He was not used to the interrogation room for the first time, especially the metal chair, which made his butt very uncomfortable. The person in charge of interrogating Morgan was not the previous investigation leader, but the FBI director himself. Morgan said tentatively, "Burns, you are actually in charge of this interrogation. It seems that your FBI has the exact physical evidence." The current director of the FBI, whose full name is William Joseph Burns, is known to Morgan. Director Burns sighed and said, "Morgan, you really caused me a big trouble." He didn't treat Morgan like a prisoner. Field is just under investigation. Are you using a torture device? What Morgan is talking about here is a torture device, but he actually refers to things like Veritaserum. The most important thing now is to clear the relationship. As for whether Field betrayed him, it no longer mattered. He asked whether Field would only confirm that the other party would torture him to extract a confession. In fact, truth serum is not 100% effective. Its main mechanism of action is to interfere with people's judgment and advanced cognitive functions, making it difficult to lie. If this drug is used for a long time and in large quantities, it will cause damage to the human body, and the confession obtained from it will be invalid and illegal in court. Therefore, in fact, this thing is generally only used at the last or critical moment. Burns shook his head. We didn't. According to the investigators at the time, before they asked any questions, the other party just talked to himself and told everything about you. Morgan crossed his hands on his chest, leaned back slightly, and said, "So you just arrested me? Where is the other evidence? Our lighthouse country is a society governed by the rule of law." Burns shook his head again and said, "Have you ever thought about something?" All ears. Morgan didn't think there was any other evidence, and he didn't do anything about the BSAA plan at all. Just thinking about it, it wasn't a crime. As for their funding of the Greyhound organization, the issue of evidence has been raised before and will not be repeated here. The FBC funds the Greyhound organization. Both parties have acknowledged its existence. Do you think evidence is still needed to convict? Burns felt a little funny in his heart. Field's behavior could be considered a surrender. Morgan said, "I don't understand the law. Moreover, the Greyhound organization said that Field funded them, but they did not say that it was the FBC organization. Do you think you can clear up the relationship by saying this?" Burns continued, "If you think so, why didn't you say so at the press conference?" Morgan responded fluently, "Because at the time I had no idea that Field had actually done that kind of thing." Burns added, "So your answer is that this was all done by Field and had nothing to do with you or the F.B.C. After hearing this, Morgan did not answer immediately. He was full of vigilance and suspected that this was a trap. "Didn't Field answer your question?" "I am investigating you now, Morgan. Please cooperate." Burns felt that he had given the other party enough face. If Morgan still did not cooperate, then he would naturally not give him a good face. Morgan had had more than 10 years of food than the other party, but he was not frightened. He changed the subject and said, "I want to hire a lawyer." "Whatever you want." After saying that, Burns left the investigation room. As the investigation into Field deepens, the FBI knows more about the situation and has sent people to collect evidence. In addition, Field also provided a very important piece of information that could prove that Morgan secretly used FBC resources to research new biochemical viruses. In addition to the purchase of research equipment and the flow of funds, it is also said that the 3 Queen cruise ships were transformed into research laboratories at Morgan's request. He returned to his office, told President Summer and Simmons about Morgan's situation, and waited for the latest instructions from the two. "Let the lawyers deal with the legal issues. We need investigative time," Simmons said. According to Field's confession, the 3 Queens have self-destruct systems controlled by Morgan himself, so they need to control Morgan now. After Director Burns saw President Summer nodding in agreement, he went back to work. In the White House, President Summer and Simmons were discussing one thing, which was who to send to investigate. President Summer prefers that the FBI and DSO cooperate and go together. After confirming the location of the cruise ship, Simmons proposed that BSAA also participate. Reason: this ship called Queen Zenobia is closer to the Gold Coast of Africa. Simmons explained, "The FBI doesn't know how long it can delay, so we must hurry up." President Summer raised his eyebrows, thought of something, and asked, "Do you want the Minister of BSAA Africa to go there?" Simmons smiled, "He is also our agent, isn't he?" President Summer lowered his head and weighed the pros and cons in his mind, thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of doing so. He asked, "But for such a big scandal like the FBC, It doesn't seem very good for the BSAA to know about it, right? Look at it from another perspective. Judging from the relationship between our country and the FBC, the truth announced by the FBI and DSO can easily be questioned, but with the addition of BSAA, it will be more convincing and help shape our country's image. There is another point in what Simmons said. That is, I and others have to announce the F.B.C.'s investigation status anyway, and the other party will know about it sooner or later. President Samur thought for a while and agreed to the other party's suggestion. I understand. It's up to you to contact Luo Guang, but you must control the scope of those who have knowledge. 2 days later, a luxury cruise ship named Queen Zenobia is drifting in the vast Atlantic Ocean. The ship is very quiet, unlike other luxury cruise ships that are reveling 24 hours a day. Behind it, there is a dark shadow hiding underwater, following far behind. This dark shadow is the stolen Sorrow-class submarine. After receiving the target's location, they immediately rushed to the target area and finally found the cruise ship in front of them. Why did they choose this cruise ship as the target? Compared with Europe and the United States, the African Navy is weaker, the sonar system is not perfect, and it is more convenient for submarines to replenish supplies. Therefore, the submarine is closest to the area where the Queen Zenobia is located. After the submarine was in place, the captain immediately contacted his superiors to confirm again whether Morgan was still trapped in the FBI headquarters for investigation. Morgan could not leave the FBI headquarters for the time being. Simmons found the top lawyer in the country to accompany the other party's lawyer to argue, so Morgan could not even get bail. The captain soon received a reply and officially started the action. First, the submarine was controlled to approach the luxury cruise ship, and then the Frogman team with underwater propulsion devices left the submarine at periscope depth and approached the luxury cruise ship. After the submarine sent out the combat team, it immediately slowed down and began to sink, increasing the distance between it and the cruise ship, and at the same time, a modified Harpoon anti-ship missile was put into standby mode. The Frogman was in position, and the missile was launched and accurately hit the cruise ship's communication antenna, making it impossible to contact Morgan or receive the self-destruct signal. Taking advantage of the fire and chaos, the Frogman climbed onto the cruise ship using a magnetic suction device and killed his way in. In fact, the person who stole the submarine was not a member of the Greyhound, but a member of the Apocalypse organization. Only those who entered the naval base by truck were members of the Greyhound organization. The cooperation between the two parties is to get what they need. The Greyhound organization needs the Apocalypse organization's submarine to make a feint to the east and attack the west, and at the same time, send the materials of the biological and chemical bomb and the hunter larvae to the city of Terra Grigia for them in advance. In turn, the Apocalypse organization also asked the other party to undertake the task against the FBC to attract the enemy's attention for their actions. Jack Norman, the leader of the Greyhounds, was very suspicious of this organization at first and did not want to cooperate, but his right-hand man convinced him. The Apocalypse's goal seemed to be to target the FBC organization, to discredit the other party's reputation, and even to defeat the FBC organization through public opinion. In fact, they were only interested in the mysterious virus that the FBC was researching, and they were just dealing with the FBC organization. At first, the Apocalypse organization did not get much information, but by tracing the biochemical raw materials and research equipment, they still speculated that Morgan built the research institute on a small island or a large ship at sea. The next step was positioning and action. There was no need to think too much. Morgan would definitely take measures to ensure that the evidence on the ship could be destroyed when necessary. Therefore, the Apocalypse organization formulated this plan, using memory surgery to modify the memories of the two FBC agents who participated in the attack, transforming them into their own undercover agents, and then using this to develop more undercover agents in the FBC. The reason why Field woke up on the operating table was that he had undergone a memory transformation operation by the Apocalypse organization. So in his own memory, he has always been an undercover agent of the Apocalypse organization in the FBC, and he will naturally tell the Apocalypse people all the information he knows. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 524. When the Apocalypse organization was operating on the Queen Zenobia, Luo Guang was sitting in a helicopter, flying towards the ship. The helicopter has a long range, but if you want to fly directly from the African coast to the Queen Zenobia, even with an auxiliary fuel tank, it is not enough for a round trip. But compared with airplanes, helicopters have lower landing requirements and do not need aircraft carrier support. A larger ship can provide takeoff and landing and supplies. That's why Luo Guang took a helicopter to carry out this mission. Field only told the FBI and others the approximate location of the 3 ships, but this was not a problem for Luo Guang. It is not easy to find the target even with satellites in the vast ocean, but don't forget that the 3 sister ships of the Queen Zenobia were all ships of the Umbrella Company before. Even though Morgan spent a lot of effort to modify it, the hidden positioning system was not discovered and still played a role. Luo Guang has not taken action against these 3 ships because he has no reason to do so. This incident is of great importance, and Simmons has not uploaded the specific information to the database within the X organization for the time being. Not only did he do this, but the President and the FBI also did not enter the relevant information into the computer system, so the Red Emperor was unable to get the inside information from it. Luo Guang is Simmons' confidant, but the other party did not tell him the specific circumstances of the incident, and only asked him to investigate the Queen Zenobia and collect evidence from it. Simmons did this not because he did not trust Luo Guang, but to protect him. In case of any accident, such as the truth being leaked, the unaware BSAA organization will naturally not be blamed too much. Simmons can even use the power of public opinion in the organization to put the blame on the BSAA and become a victim of deception. Luo Guang did not know the specific situation, and the plot of Resident Evil Revelation has also changed beyond recognition, so he is still fully armed and did not take it lightly. This has nothing to do with his strength, but just his cautious personality. In addition to the R-9 pistol and the invisible straight knife, he also brought a Desert Eagle as a backup pistol. Because the ship's interior was small, the main weapon this time was the South African-made Striker automatic shotgun. In addition to firearms, he also brought several grenades and C4 bombs. Luo Guang did not bring incendiary bombs like in the game, because this mission was to collect evidence, and incendiary bombs could easily set these things on fire, and it was difficult to control the fire when used on the ship. As for bringing C4 bombs, it was just to prevent being trapped, and it was mainly used for escape. Suddenly, the helicopter pilot informed, "I saw the ship, but the situation on the ship was not right." Luo Guang opened the side door and looked out. He saw that the Queen Zenobia was on fire, but no one was seen putting out the fire. "Just find a place to put it down." "Got it," the helicopter pilot from the X organization replied. Luo Guang put on a mask, quickly rappelled to the ship, and then immediately took out his weapon, ready to fight at any time. However, just as the helicopter was flying back, a missile flew out from under the sea and directly shot down the helicopter. Because of his position, Luo Guang did not see the moment the missile left the water, but he had confirmed that there were no ships around. On the other hand, he also saw clearly that the missile flying overhead was a Harpoon anti-ship missile. Therefore, he reasonably suspected that the missile was launched from a submarine, and the fire burning above the Queen Zenobia was likely the work of the missile. While thinking about this, Luo Guang reported the situation. He could directly tell the Red Queen about the situation by voice, and then ask her to help send it to others. The Apocalypse's submarine did not leave after completing the task of transporting the Frogman team and destroying communications. They hung behind the Queen Zenobia, waiting to pick up the Frogman team, or sink the cruise ship if the mission failed. So the helicopter was discovered when the submarine observer observed with a periscope, and immediately notified the captain of the ship. The submarine captain did not rush to attack, and also let the missile stand by first, and asked the superiors whether to shoot down the helicopter. The Apocalypse organization responded that it could be shot down, but this back and forth gave the helicopter time to put Luo Guang down. After the Frogman team that had boarded the ship and was fighting with the security personnel on the ship received this news, the captain immediately sent 2 people to search and kill the invaders. And just after they separated the 2 people, something strange happened, and a biochemical monster broke into the battlefield. Luo Guang had not acted alone for a long time since the company's chaos, and he couldn't help but feel a little excited. He soon found traces of fighting here. There was a huge gap in the strength of the 2 warring parties. The bodies he found along the way were all people on the same side. Luo Guang thought that these people were originally on the ship, because he saw these bodies in uniform all the way in. If these bodies were all attackers, the security personnel on the ship would have driven the enemy away instead of letting the enemy go all the way. Because the Queen Zenobia had been transformed, Luo Guang confirmed that the previous map could not be used after walking a few sections. So he decided to follow the route of the enemy's attack and follow the traces of battle left by the other side. Luo Guang came to a T-shaped intersection and carefully cut left and right. After confirming that most angles were safe, he pulled out and quickly confirmed the remaining 2 blind spots. Still no enemy appeared. He followed the traces to the corridor on the left and ran into the 2 enemies who came to deal with Luo Guang. The 2 reacted quickly and aimed their guns at Luo Guang without saying a word. But Luo Guang was faster, and he was holding his gun and walking, so he didn't need to raise his gun and shot first. So weak Luo Guang looked at the 2 people who fell to the ground and commented, without a trace of emotion in his heart. He sat over and opened their hoods, took out his mobile phone and took photos, and then sent them to Simmons and Hong Huang respectively. Both sides moved forward in parallel, and soon there was news. The 2 people had clean backgrounds and no criminal records. They had no intersection in daily life, and their places of residence were far apart. The only thing in common was that they bought plane tickets to the same place at the same time. As for the in-depth investigation, it was handed over to the X organization. After confirming that the 2 people did not have identity badges or anything like that, Luo Guang continued to set off. On the other side, the undefeated golden body of the Apocalypse Frogman team has been broken, and those biochemical monsters that do not distinguish between enemies and friends have successfully brought them casualties in the chaos. But under the leadership of their captain, they still overcame all obstacles and successfully advanced to the door of the first research room. This team has taken the sample of Taiwan virus from the virus cold storage room, and now they just need to take away the experimental data. The office of the chief researcher is set up in this research room, and his computer must have the information they want. The Apocalypse team is on standby outside the door and did not continue to advance. Because the people of the Institute have concentrated their forces and weapons and ammunition to establish a crossfire position here, the Apocalypse organization can only hide outside the door temporarily, avoid the sharp edge, and wait for the opportunity. The captain, who was thinking about how to pretend to be more cool, pressed the headset, and a voice came from it. It was the submarine who was contacting him. The 2 people you sent out were killed instantly. The 2 people had body detectors on them, so the submarine knew that the 2 were dead. Isn't there only one enemy? The Frogman captain's expression did not change. He raised his hand and shot the biochemical monster that appeared from the exhaust port. This biochemical monster was formed by a marine fish that was infected with a virus and mutated. It had sharp teeth in its mouth, and the fins on both sides became limbs similar to feet, allowing this mutant fish to move on the ground. However, its intelligence did not improve at all. It made a sound in the exhaust pipe, so it naturally could not sneak attack the Frogman team. The submarine captain replied, the two were killed almost at the same time. Be careful. The Frogman captain smiled contemptuously and said, don't worry, I am an S-level adapter. It is not difficult to kill two people at the same time. An old man with a gun can do it by sneak attack. Be careful, you are a valuable adapter of the organization. The submarine captain's tone revealed worry. This is a valuable asset of the organization. But the other party did not appreciate it. He replied casually and hung up the communication. The submarine sighed and did not contact the other party again. He just reported the matter to the Apocalypse organization. He was just an A-class adapter who specialized in command, and he was one level lower than the S-class in the organization. Although he was nominally the commander-in-chief, the other party also had the right to take away this power, so he could only report the matter, rather than force the other party to do anything. The higher UPS only replied with a received and did not contact the S-class adapter. Because this mission was a practical test for this pampered S-class adapter. After the Frogman captain hung up the communication, he said to the people around him, no more playing, I'm going to deal with the enemy. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared from his teammates' sight. Although the enemy prepared a lot of ammunition, they would not hold the trigger. Even if there were enough bullets, the barrel could not withstand such continuous and fierce shooting. So when the Frogman team hid behind the solid steel wall without poking their heads out, and only occasionally raised their guns to fight back, the people in the laboratory also stopped shooting. This S-class adapter took advantage of the opportunity when the enemy stopped shooting, rushed in, and killed into the enemy. The others outside the door did not rush in. They were just ordinary A-level adapters, and going in would only hinder the captain. In less than a minute, the gunfire stopped. Before the enemy captured the virus storage room, the security on the ship gathered in the laboratory at the request of the supervisor. He also sent a rescue signal to Morgan, released the biochemical monster, established a defensive position in the first laboratory, and so on. The supervisor did everything he could, but in the end he could only die in regret. This proud son of heaven paid no attention to the supervisor's hateful eyes and crushed the other's head with one foot. Then he asked his men to come in and do the task. Of course, the chores of collecting research data were left to the A-level adapters under his command, not his precious S-level. Although Luo Guang easily dealt with the two people who attacked him, he did not relax his vigilance. He did not like this kind of closed and narrow place, because in his opinion, it was full of pits where old swindlers squatted. Although cautious, he moved forward at a fast pace and soon arrived at the virus sample room. Luo Guang checked and found that all the viruses inside were destroyed. The operation records of the storage machine were also cleared. He couldn't help but wonder, is the other party an anti-biochemical organization? Although he found nothing, he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he pried open the control panel to see if there was an interface on it. In general, this type of storage machine will be connected to the internet to facilitate the laboratory to confirm the virus situation in time. As a result, no interface was found in the machine, but the network port was found behind the machine. That can also be used. Luo Guang took out the converter and connected the network cable and the watch together. Next, Hong Huang would invade it through various means. After confirming that the Hong Huang virus had been transmitted and the rest of the things could be solved by Hong Huang himself, he left the virus storage room. At this point, the supervisor shrank the defense line and the traces of the battle were interrupted, so Luo Guang could only let Hong Huang use the ship's internal monitoring to confirm the situation. Soon Hong Huang told him the location of the first laboratory and the things he had initiated. With Hong Huang confirming the internal situation and the enemy's position, Luo Guang could naturally speed up. After solving those blind deep-sea mutant monsters along the way, he arrived at the first laboratory before the Apocalypse team evacuated. Luo Guang fired all the bullets from the automatic shotgun in his hand, and killed half of the enemies in an instant with the sneak attack. Then he raised the empty shotgun to block the dagger attack of the S-level adapter. The enemy's dagger was not an ordinary weapon, it was extremely sharp. In addition, the opponent's attack was also powerful, so Luo Guang simply abandoned his weapon and retreated from the laboratory. He was showing weakness to the enemy, which was also his usual trick. The S-level adapter snorted coldly. The opponent's speed seemed very fast, but it was far less than his real strength. He shouted to his men, "You go to work and see if the shot can be saved. I will deal with the little mouse." After that, he moved and chased after him. The S-level adapter was best at speed. He quickly caught up with Luo Guang, pulled out the pistol at his waist, and was about to shoot Luo Guang's arm. He had excellent shooting results. The reason why he chose to aim at the arm was just to add pressure to the enemy, just like playing with a mouse. But at the moment he pulled the trigger, Luo Guang went directly into the room next door and dodged the attack. "Tisk, so slippery," the S-level adapter cursed in a low voice, and came to the side of the room, but did not rush in. Although he was arrogant, he was not stupid. He tried to look inside to check the situation, and then instantly retracted. A huge gunshot rang out, and a bullet hit next to him, sparking and making a loud noise. Luo Guang confirmed the opponent's reaction speed, and then fired a few more shots randomly. The S-level adapter heard that the opponent's weapon was a Desert Eagle with only 7 bullets, so he changed to a high-altitude probe and repeated the same trick, making the enemy run out of bullets. Now, he seized the opportunity and rushed into the room, but there was no trace of the enemy in front. Luo Guang, who was not slow, hid behind the door immediately after firing the bullet, just out of the enemy's sight. He closed the door without saying a word. Facing a slippery enemy, the best way is to map the cannon or limit the opponent's range of activities. The principle of both is the same, which is to limit the enemy's speed advantage. You can't run so fast without looking at the road. As Luo Guang said this, he moved his hands and feet, wondering how much strength the other party could reach. Wesker? Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 525. Chapter 515 Fusion Taiwan Virus. When the enemy heard Luo Guang's disdainful words, his face twisted involuntarily. No one had ever ridiculed him like this since he was born. Diamond suit, he shouted, "I will make you pay." Luo Guangke didn't want to listen to the other party's nonsense, so he rushed over and slapped the other party. The enemy was sent flying by him, spun around several times, and hit the wall. The slap didn't do much physical damage, but it caused tons of mental damage to him. "Trash, are you okay? If not, just change your personality," Luo Guang mocked again. He knew from the other person's unfinished words that the other person was not a stable person, and would lose his calmness as long as he was stimulated with words. The enemy did as he wished, his face flushed with anger, and he roared and killed Luo Guang again. Agility, 20. The system measures the enemy's flexibility attribute based on the speed at which the enemy attacks. Luo Guang heard the words in his mind and raised his hand to receive the attack a little faster than the opponent. Although the numerical value is only slightly different, the difference in speed is not small. The enemy originally thought that Luo Guang only succeeded in sneak attack while he was talking. Although the speed was very fast, he would definitely not go all out, but he did not expect that his attack would be lightly blocked by the opponent. Strength, 15. The two sides fight and let the system measure the opponent's strength. When Luo Guang saw these two data, he thought that the other party's strength was from the Apocalypse organization. Thinking about something, he used a straight knife with his right hand to block the enemy's dagger, and gave the opponent another slap with his other hand. The opponent focused all his attention on the weapon confrontation. Facing this attack, he made no defensive moves at all and was sent flying by Luo Guang again. Luo Guang was a little confused. The opponent's body reaction speed doesn't look like that of a person with 20 dexterity. Could it be that his thinking speed is slower? But he didn't question the system's judgment because the system had said from the beginning that it was just using his eyes and body sense to infer the opponent's ability. In addition, each attribute contains various contents, so it is normal to have errors. Your reaction is too slow. Luo Guang didn't have time for the other party to think and activated his taunting skill again. The enemy took the bait again, shouting and attacking. Clapping his hands to block, raising his knees to collide, Luo Guang kept defending, confirming that the opponent had little actual combat experience at all. The enemy's movements are very standard, but their moves and responses are very rigid. All aspects of combat are far worse than Wesker's. Luo Guang sighed, broke through the opponent's block with a heavy punch, hit his stomach, and flew out again. The enemy quickly stood up, breathing heavily, gritting his teeth and making a decision in his mind. He took out the Taiwan virus from his body, raised it up and was about to drink it into his mouth, but Luo Guang snatched it away. He didn't need to look to know that the other party wanted to drink the virus sample directly to gain more power, and then fight with all his strength. This is not a TV show. Luo Guang was speechless towards this enemy, as he really had no actual combat experience. Normal people would not stand around and watch the protagonist transform, not to mention that the other party was not the protagonist of Resident Evil. The other party's eyes widened and his mouth opened, watching Luo Guang drink the virus sample. Luo Guang recognized that the virus sample test tube was the same as the empty test tube in the virus storage room, and the other person was posing to drink it, so he was naturally not afraid of getting upset. An unknown virus has been detected. This is called Taiwan virus. Luo Guang interrupted the system. The Red Emperor had successfully invaded and learned about the virus, so Luo Guang knew the name. While the system was being analyzed, Luo Guang was not idle, preparing to use the Shinra virus to control the opponent. He tried a question: is this virus sample our target? Who are you? The other party didn't answer the question, but asked instead. This arrogant S-class adapter was in bad shape. He had never suffered such a setback since he was a child. Although he knew that he was not the only S-class in the world, he always believed that there were not many wild S-class adapters in the outside world, because every S-class was extremely precious to the organization, and he would definitely do his best to bring them back to the organization. But he didn't expect that on his first mission, he would encounter an enemy who was stronger than him in every aspect. Luo Guang was too lazy to continue talking nonsense, ignored the other party's words, stepped forward and beat him, and at the same time injected the Shinra virus into his body. He learned from the Red Emperor's report that the enemy in front of him showed different combat effectiveness when he was dealing with the enemies in the research room. Such a person is a talent no matter which organization he is in, so he will naturally be entrusted with important tasks. He must know a lot of secrets, so he plans to ask something from the other party. This room was also deliberately chosen and did not have CCTV installed. However, the Shinra virus injected into his body triggered his body's defense system as soon as it entered it. Not only is the immune system at work, Luo Guang also senses through viruses that there are many biochemical viruses lurking in the enemy's body. In fact, people who were invaded by the Shinra virus in the past had their immune systems triggered, but they were basically unable to resist it, and their brains were instantly overtaken by the Shinra virus. But the immune system of the S-class adapter in front of him was different from that of ordinary people, and there were also various familiar biochemical viruses cooperating with the defense, which slowed down the attack of the Shinra virus on the brain. Luo Guang looked coldly at the enemy who was rolling on the ground in great pain, without a trace of pity. In fact, the virus invasion would not bring such great pain, and the normal situation would be like viral fever. He deliberately controlled the Shinra virus to attack the opponent's nerves to create pain, thereby disintegrating his willpower. In addition to controlling the virus, he also had to be busy with the matter of integrating the virus. As he became more and more proficient in using his clones, he became more and more proficient in multitasking, and it played a role in every aspect of life. Luo Guang only had one gun. When there were 3 people, when he used the gun on one person, the other naturally had to wait on the side. With multitasking, he could also use the golden hand to accurately maintain the pleasure of the other person, ensuring that he would not neglect the other person, so that the two of them would always maintain passion. Taiwan virus has been analyzed, and the database has been successfully matched, which contains T-virus, Harlan virus, and unknown virus. Just when Luo Guang was thinking about it, the new virus had been analyzed, and he didn't need to remind him to do so. The well-trained system automatically started to analyze the unknown virus. Analysis of unknown virus completed. There is a similar virus in the database, named Abyss virus, with a similarity of 66.81%. Then define the unknown virus as Abyss virus as well. Luo Guang, who was still wondering what the database had, thought of the Resident Evil revelation. Morgan researched the T-Abyss virus. In addition to the viruses in the Resident Evil game, this world also has viruses in various zombie games, so Morgan in this world only added the Harlan virus when researching viruses. In this way, the Night in T-Night Abyss virus should represent the Night Demon, which is the representative monster of the Harlan virus. Analysis progress 100%, according to the needs of the adapter, start to integrate conventional skills integration completed. The conventional skills here refer to skills such as physical strengthening, which increased Luo Guang's endurance attribute by 1 point to 29 points. In addition, the biggest improvement is the burst skill after integration, which has exceeded his commonly used electrical energy stimulation burst, but he still prefers to use electrical energy to stimulate cells for strengthening and bursting, which is simple and efficient with fewer side effects. Special skills have been selected according to the needs of the adapter. Luo Guang was not in a hurry to check, because the enemy rolling in front of him had a problem. In the face of obstacles, the Shinra virus chose to fight on the spot to support the enemy and develop its own population first. Rather than fighting with the enemy's fast-reacting immune system, he preferred to develop and take it away in one wave. As a result, when he controlled the virus to launch a general attack, the enemy's body surface suddenly showed signs of mutation, but the signs were suppressed by the Shinra virus as soon as they appeared. The reason was quickly found out, that the virus in his body sensed the danger of the host and spontaneously mutated. This was not a problem for Luo Guang. The well-developed Shinra virus was sweeping away the virus in his body like autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, uprooting the hidden dangers of mutation. He took advantage of this time to continue to check the fusion virus. 2/3 of the viruses in this Taiwan virus were fused by Luo Guang, so the focus was on this Abyss virus. Special skill, underwater ability. The adapter can use the skin to absorb oxygen from the water underwater, and can dive to a deeper place without the assistance of equipment. The specific depth is determined by the adapter's endurance attribute. Note, this skill will not make the adapter have gills. Luo Guang's evaluation of this special skill is mediocre, and it will definitely not be used too often. However, this skill can make up for his shortcomings in underwater combat, so he is still happy to accept this ability. When Luo Guang completed the fusion, the enemy in front of him was successfully controlled by the Shinra virus. The adaptability level is not linked to the strength of willpower, and because of the other party's growth experience, the enemy was easily controlled by his suggestion. Time is tight, and he did not move, saying, "I ask you to answer." The S-level adapter sat on the ground, put his hands where Luo Guang could see, and replied, "Yes." Name, organization. Luo Guang cared about the other party's name just to facilitate the summary and sorting later. James Lee, I am an S-class adapter of the Apocalypse organization. Luo Guang thought to himself, sure enough, and asked, is Apocalypse the real name of your organization? Yes. My parents taught us to be loyal to the Apocalypse organization since we were young, and everything is for the advent of a new era. What is the new era? My parents didn't tell me the specifics, but it is said that it is related to the evolution of mankind. Although this James is an S-class, he seems to be not in the core layer of the Apocalypse organization due to his experience and other reasons, and he said that his parents told him everything. Luo Guang was curious about this and asked, "Did your parents tell you about the organization?" Yes, James explained his life and said, "I am a rich second generation, I just need to eat well, sleep well, and have fun. There is no need to worry about these things. Anyway, my parents will arrange it for me." Obviously, there are also relatives in this Apocalypse organization. Luo Guang asked, "Does your organization not care?" James thought for a while, and replied with a somewhat dissatisfied tone, "The organization only requires us to have more children. So far, I have given birth to 8 children with 2 A-class wives, all of whom are A-class adapters." Although Luo Guang controlled him, he used relatively mild hints, so he was not dissatisfied with Luo Guang, but was dissatisfied with the organization for only arranging 2 wives for him. In his eyes, an S-level adapter like himself should have many wives and concubines. Luo Guang looked at the other person's young appearance and said, "How old are you? When did you start?" 22 years old, I started when I was 18, basically 1 a year. Although you can give birth continuously, giving birth is still a big consumption for the body, so the Apocalypse organization will force a rest time between 2 births. Are you all the Apocalypse's reproductive machines? Although he said so, Luo Guang originally thought that the Apocalypse organization would be even more excessive, and would not care about things like marriage, and directly treat people as breeding animals. No, we are pioneers in optimizing human genes. James felt that he was doing a great job. Why bother about marriage? We are human beings, not beasts. This is also conducive to management and prevents inbreeding. In fact, there is another reason, but James just doesn't know it. Luo Guang immediately asked another question, "You are S-class, so why don't you have an S-class wife?" James sighed and replied, "S-class has privileges, and the organization cannot force them. As for A-class adapters, their status within the organization is basically over. If they want to get S-class treatment, they either become our S-class wives or complete high-value tasks." He repeated what his parents had said to him and explained issues such as breeding efficiency. The tasks within the Apocalypse organization are not based on difficulty, but on value. For example, Wang Wei's task was not difficult, but the value was very high. Luo Guang then asked a few more questions about the Apocalypse organization base and learned a lot of information, such as the confidentiality procedures of the Apocalypse organization, so that there would be no more Boston bombings in the future. What is your purpose here? The content of the Apocalypse organization is more important, so after he asked these questions, he asked the other party about this mission. First, the stolen submarine was lurking nearby, waiting for James and his team to come to pick them up after completing the mission. If the mission failed or James died, the submarine would directly sink the cruise ship. If they could defeat James, the S-class adapter, then other A-class people would naturally not be able to defeat him, so the superiors would issue the order to sink the cruise ship immediately if James died. Luo Guang had guessed that the submarine was nearby when the helicopter was shot down before, and he had contacted Simmons, but there was no Navy of the Lighthouse country around this area, and by the time the Navy of the Lighthouse country arrived, the enemy had already run away. As for the Navy in Africa, to be honest, they didn't have much combat power, so he didn't contact them. However, he now controlled the enemy's VIP person, and perhaps he could send the Shinra virus into the submarine when the other party picked up people, and then control its members to take the submarine away. James was still narrating his mission, but unfortunately he didn't know the plans of the Apocalypse organization and the Greyhound organization. These things were not kept secret from him, but his parents didn't tell him, and he was not interested in asking. His mission here was to collect the new virus and its supporting research materials studied by the FBC, and also to serve as actual combat training. Regarding actual combat training, Luo Guang asked another question and found that the other party's lack of actual combat was not an exception. The most important task for S-class adapters is to optimize human genes. There is no task that cannot be assigned to them. Naturally, people with excellent physical fitness cannot compare to A-class combatants in terms of combat experience. Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 526. Luo Guang sighed. He didn't know whether it was lucky or unlucky to catch such a person. Diamond suit. Luckily, although the enemy was S-level, his combat power was not much higher, so he could easily solve and control the opponent. Unfortunately, the Apocalypse organization also knew that this person was unreliable, so they did not entrust him with important tasks. He was not clear about many secrets of the organization, so he could not obtain important intelligence. But at least there was new progress in the investigation of the Apocalypse organization. Luo Guang continued to target James's mission purpose and asked, "Actual combat training? Since your organization didn't ask you to do it before, why did you suddenly arrange for you to do this?" James replied, "My parents said that a new era is coming, so we have to contribute to the organization." His parents also knew their son's virtues, so they didn't say too much, because if they did, their son wouldn't care, but it would increase the risk of exposing the organization's purpose. He recalled and continued, "My parents have been very busy since last year, and they haven't been home for dinner. By the way, the parents of my best friends are the same." Luo Guang made a note of the fact that the other party had best friends, and asked first, "How strong are your parents compared to you?" "I can't beat 10 of them." James's statement was a bit exaggerated, but he really had no chance of winning against his parents. He then added the emergency training his parents gave him, and talked about his parents' experience in the past. Luo Guang nodded, which means that there are also capable S-level fighters in the Apocalypse organization. Although there are many people like James, there are more capable S-level fighters in general. Originally, he thought that the Apocalypse organization has been pursuing a covert Z strategy for so many years, and has been developing quietly in secret for the sake of confidentiality. It will not interfere in various things in the world like the X organization, and the number of battles should not be too many. Now James told him that his parents had been mercenaries, and participated in armed conflicts around the world to gain experience. Knowing this, Luo Guang thought that he might be able to investigate the members of the Apocalypse organization from this aspect. After all, no matter how much the S-level hides its strength, it will definitely have an eye-catching performance in battle. Except for Wesker, Luo Guang has not fought with other S-level adapters, so he has to plan ahead. He is better at setting up ambushes before or even during battles, so that the enemy misjudges his strength and is thrown off balance by him. So in order to keep his strength and identity secret, James in front of him can't stay. However, before that, he must squeeze out the other party's surplus value. Luo Guang had already asked about the identity and address of the other party's parents, and the other party just mentioned the matter of the best friend, so he continued to ask about this and recorded the information of the people James knew, including the surface identities of these Apocalypse. He planned to let the X organization capture these people and connect them with the Apocalypse organization. Those Apocalypse people will definitely not surrender, and the X organization will naturally know that these people are extraordinary. Simmons and the family organization behind him will definitely not allow such a powerful force to hide. After writing it down, he edited a message and asked Hong Huang to send it to Simmons along with the list. The reason why he told Simmons about this matter in the first place was because Luo Guang was worried that after James and his friends had an accident, the Apocalypse organization would immediately arrange for the people in the network to leave in order to keep it secret. The Boston bombing told him that the Apocalypse organization would do anything to keep it secret. Luo Guang suddenly thought of something and said, "What's the matter with the virus in your body? Why don't A-level adapters have biochemical viruses in their bodies?" James was quite familiar with his physical condition and said, "I had an adaptability test when I was born, and I was injected with the virus after I learned that I was S-level. My mother said that babies have the best adaptability." After a pause, he answered the second question in a smaller voice, "As for A-level adapters, although they can also be injected with viruses, I heard that S-level people don't want A-level people to be injected with viruses, and only allow them to use strengthening agents. S-level adapters are several times stronger than A-level adapters, but the number of A-level adapters is dozens of times that of S-level. Your organization keeps saying that it's for human evolution, but this is more selfish than I thought." The highest Apocalypse member Luo Guang had met before was only A-level, but the core members of the Apocalypse organization were all S-level, so he naturally didn't know that there were also many contradictions within the organization, so those people would fight to the death to improve their level. James replied, "Our organization is already dealing with this issue, at least I have to be more polite to my two wives now. It's still because of this new era. Yes, so our organization must also evolve, reform, to adapt to the new era. Next, what Luo Guang has to do is to confirm what this new era is. He is worried that the enemy will spread the virus around the world to promote human evolution, just like Wesker's plan." Then Luo Guang continued to ask James various questions to make sure he told all the information he knew. Simmons received Luo Guang's report. He also had some impression of the Apocalypse organization. He remembered that Luo Guang had mentioned this organization before, but there was only his own words and a recording that could not be confirmed. Although he believed the other party's words, he had no clues to continue the investigation, so he could not mobilize the full power of the X organization to avoid the Parliament's protest against his waste of organizational power. The reason for the lack of clues is that Luo Guang did not tell Simmons about the fact that Fakado's clone was following the two people. Because he knew that Simmons, who thought that the X organization was the best in the world, would definitely underestimate the strength of the Apocalypse organization and would definitely choose to capture the two people immediately to confirm the existence of the Apocalypse organization. Now Luo Guang told Simmons about these possible S-level Apocalypse members, hoping that the other party could understand the power of the Apocalypse organization. Simmons did not call Luo Guang to confirm again and again. Not only did Luo Guang provide the latest evidence, but the intelligence department of the X organization also found a lot of evidence when investigating the Boston bombing to prove that there was a mysterious organization hidden in the dark. Anyway, although there were a few wealthy people on the list given by Luo Guang, there were no people with greater power, so even if there were mistakes, it would not cause big trouble. Having said that, he still made sufficient preparations in advance to make the action justified. Back to Luo Guang, after he asked about James, he asked the other party to contact his teammates to inquire about the progress of the mission. He planned to control the entire Frogman team with the Shinra virus and then execute the plan to seize the submarine. "Have you finished collecting intelligence?" James did not explain why he took so long to contact them, and directly asked about the completion of the other party's mission. His teammates did not show any doubts about James's behavior of not returning and not having any contact, because in their eyes, James was a person who did his own thing, and asking him this question would definitely be scolded. James nodded, took out the communicator, and notified his men to gather in this room. The other party's people came over quickly and closed the hatch again after entering. "Put on your masks and let me confirm the personnel are correct." James looked suspicious, expressing his concern that his teammates would be replaced. The men looked around and did not see the sneak attack enemy or the camera. They moved a little slower, so James scolded impatiently, "What? Didn't you listen to the captain's words? No, these men succumbed to the other party's identity as S-level adapters. Although they were dissatisfied, they took off their masks one by one. Rightward arrow. James went over to confirm the identities of the team members one by one to delay time. After receiving Luo Guang's signal, he nodded to indicate that it was okay. At this time, Luo Guang was hiding in the next room, confirming the situation through James' eyes and ears. He had spread the Shinra virus in that room before the enemy came, but these frogmen had been wearing gas masks to cover their faces when they left the submarine. This was to prevent the enemy from discovering their faces through monitoring or other means, and thus confirming their identities, so he needed James to do such annoying things. All members of the Frogman team put on gas masks again, but they were actually controlled by Luo Guang. After doing these things, Luo Guang controlled one of the people with a similar figure to himself to come to the room where he was and take off his clothes for him. At the same time, his appearance also changed according to the other person's appearance. He did not kill the other person, because James said that they all carried life monitoring chips with positioning functions. This can naturally be used to distinguish whether he is a member of the Apocalypse organization, but there is no such detection door in the stolen submarine, so it can only be checked manually. By then, he had already entered the submarine, and what he wanted to do was not up to the people of the Apocalypse. As for the positioning problem, Luo Guang used a large suitcase to hold the paper version of the research data. In fact, he stuffed the person who was replaced into it, and naturally solved the positioning problem. Normally, for the sake of safety, he should let James enter the submarine with the Shinra virus, and then put it into the air circulation system to infect the people on the entire submarine. But Luo Guang was worried that the people he controlled would break free from his control in an accident, and he was even more worried that the Shinra virus would be captured and analyzed by others, so he would resort to this last resort. After making these preparations, Luo Guang was not in a hurry to take down the submarine, but let James lead the team and split up with himself to clear the clues on the ship. As for the surveillance video and other traces that might expose his abilities, he had already asked Hong Huang to deal with them. Finally, James contacted the submarine for support according to his request. Unexpectedly, the submarine did not let them enter the submarine in the water, but took them back to the ship while surfacing for air. Therefore, they did not enter the submarine, but directly checked on the deck, and then entered the submarine. Luo Guang thought quickly and controlled James and said, "I haven't tried it yet, let me check it." As he said that, he was about to take the chip detector from the other party. The other party stepped back, causing James to frown. He said, "What? Can't you recognize my face?" The man was neither humble nor arrogant, and only handed the detector to the other party after asking the submarine captain. James snorted, snatched the detector, and first pressed the switch on his left arm. After a while, the situation of the person to whom the chip belonged was displayed. He then pushed the detector screen in front of the inspector's face and said, "Do you have any questions?" "No, please." The man was also flexible and there was no dissatisfaction on his face. Luo Guang controlled James to check a few more people, roughly understanding how to use the detector and the monitoring range, and confirmed that everyone's chip was implanted in the left arm. He was the second to last, and the suitcase was placed on his left, and the left arm of the person inside was also placed outside. James moved the detector from bottom to top, pressed the switch when passing the suitcase, and then quickly lifted it to Luo Guang's left arm. This action was very fast, and the previous person did the same operation. The inspector just thought that the other party was crazy, scanning directly and making meaningless little movements, so he did not doubt it, and did not say anything after seeing the relevant information on the detector. He just asked what was in the box. James answered in a bad tone that it was all after studying the data, so the other party did not dwell on this point. Luo Guang successfully passed the level. After passing the most difficult level, the next thing was a natural thing, and all the members of the Apocalypse organization on the submarine were controlled by him. Although the submarine captain was only A-level, there were some things that James did not know, such as the entire plan of the submarine theft incident and the missions that their submarine had performed, etc. After understanding all this, Luo Guang will face a problem next. How to deal with these controlled people? First of all, James is the only one who has seen his strength, so he must die. If Luo Guang hadn't kept him for a long time, he would have dealt with him long ago. Now that the submarine has been controlled by him and the intelligence has been drained by him, the opponent has no value. Although he can directly use the Shinra virus to turn the eternal toxin in his enemy into crystals, and then throw them into the sea to destroy the body, this cannot explain the submarine. So after thinking about it, he first controlled some members of the Frogman team to return to the cruise ship, and then let them die in the hands of the biochemical monster. The remaining James and 2 men were shot and killed in the submarine. Except for the submarine captain who committed suicide because of the failure of the mission, the other crew members would cooperate with the acting and shoot in the cabin, and finally be killed by Luo Guang's counterattack. The submarine has surfaced, so naturally there is no fear that bullets will damage the equipment inside the submarine and cause the submarine to sink. The specific statement is that Luo Guang sneaked into the enemy team, and then attacked the enemy when he was inspected in the submarine, and finally swept the entire submarine alone. After dealing with these people, he dealt with the scene from beginning to end, such as controlling the Shinra virus in these people's bodies to self-destruct, etc. In addition to the problems of these members, there is another point, which is how to deal with this submarine. He has 3 options. The first is to take the submarine for himself, but neither the BSAA organization nor the GIMZ force can use the submarine. Each branch of the BSAA organization has its own jurisdiction, and land and air transportation can meet its needs. The GIMZ force is in a similar situation, and they also have a large ship of their own. Moreover, this submarine is stolen goods and cannot be seen in the light, so this option was directly screened out by him. The second is to sink the submarine directly. Luo Guang does not need to do it himself, he leaves first, and then lets Hong Huang take over the submarine system and dive. After he returned to the Queen Zenobia, he detonated the Harpoon anti-ship missile in the torpedo tube, and the submarine would naturally sink under the water pressure. At that time, the explanation would be that the enemy's plan failed, and the submarine captain chose to perish together with the enemy who invaded the ship, and he finally escaped by luck. This handling method has many loopholes, and it will be very troublesome to explain at that time, so forget it. The final choice is naturally to report to Simmons and let the other party solve this trouble. Under this choice, he can earn a lot of credit from the X organization, get a lot of benefits, and the risk is relatively low. The most important thing is to cooperate with him to let Simmons capture the members of the Apocalypse organization before, and use these evidences to confirm the existence of the Apocalypse organization. After all, he not only needs Simmons, but also needs the major families in the X organization to believe that the Apocalypse organization exists and is extremely threatening. Only in this way can Simmons truly mobilize the power of the entire X organization to solve the enemy. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 528. Chapter 517 Dividing the FBC Organization. Although the X organization has a leader, it is not Simmons who has the final say. Simmons is not without any constraints. For example, when he wanted to mobilize the X organization to pursue and capture Aida, he was finally stopped by the parliament. This permanent parliament composed of representatives from various families is one of the supervision mechanisms. They will review the status of the X organization under the governance of the current leader to ensure that the interests of all their families will not be damaged. What is being reviewed here is not the decision. Because if every decision is reviewed, it will only slow down efficiency and be unfavorable to solve emergencies. They can develop to the current level without making such bureaucratic mistakes, and people without ability cannot serve as the leader of the X organization. The X organization's strength that Simmons can usually call on is based on the human and material resources that each family allocated at the beginning of its creation, and then developed to the current scale based on this. But this part of the resources still belong to each family, and at the same time, these resources are also compounding, and they are also growing and developing by using the integrated use of the X organization. These two parts of power together are the strength of the X organization. Simmons used the resources of Organization X to find Aida at first, and the Parliament had no objection to this. They could regard this as a benefit of being a leader. But when Simmons wanted to mobilize the power of the families in various places, he touched the interests of the families in the Parliament. Simmons had fallen into single-mindedness several times before, and the Parliament wanted to initiate impeachment, but they didn't expect that the other party's confidants were capable and could always produce good results. Organization X did not have any problems because of this, so in the end, those families who wanted to take the opportunity to impeach Simmons had to give up. The people on the list are basically in Europe, and this is also the sphere of influence of Organization X. So even if Simmons wanted to prepare for a war, Organization X would quickly prepare to arrest the people on the list for interrogation. At this time, Luo Guang was still controlling the people in the submarine and was collecting intelligence related to the apocalypse. Simmons took into account that his confidants said that the enemy attached great importance to confidentiality, so this arrest was carried out simultaneously around the world. The result was naturally a failure. Either the attack was in vain or the enemy killed the arresting team, which made Simmons very angry. The reason for the failure was that those people had just left their place of residence for a mission and lost their traces, which had nothing to do with Luo Guang's affairs. In any case, Simmons had decided to bring up the matter of the Apocalypse organization in the Parliament. Luo Guang was not surprised to hear the news of the mission failure. After dealing with his own affairs, he waited for another half an hour and finally waited for the ship with the helicopter. He boarded the ship and quickly went through the formalities, handing over the Queen Zenobia and the stolen submarine to the people of the X organization on the ship. This time he did not clean up the biochemical virus research data on the ship. After all, the mission was to investigate the problems of the FBC organization, so he would not delete these evidences randomly. While waiting for the ship to come to pick up, Luo Guang did not slack off. He extracted several tubes of T-Night Abyss virus samples from the biochemical monster and planned to take them back to develop vaccines and antidotes. This virus is another difficult thing to deal with, and it targets marine life, which will be very troublesome to deal with. At the same time, he also confirmed the location of several survivors who were hiding, but he did not disturb them. These are precious witnesses. Luo Guang contacted O'Brien and told him the situation. O'Brien asked, "Does the FBC really have anything to do with this ship? This is no joke." At that time, Simmons first contacted O'Brien to borrow people, and then found Luo Guang. There is no evidence to prove that it is related to the FBC. How could such a conspiracy be written in black and white? Luo Guang continued, "But I also found a few survivors. I don't know if they know the specific situation. I know, it's better for us not to go too deep into this matter. Come back when you are done. I will handle the next matter." O'Brien was worried that their BSAA would be involved in political struggles. Received. Queen Zenobia on Luo Guang's side completed the investigation the fastest, and the other two also took a long time. Leon, who was in charge of Queen Dido, had the best luck. He found evidence related to the FBC. A former Tri-Union researcher on the ship recorded Field's visit and said that Tri-Union and FBC were cooperating to develop biochemical viruses. The researcher had been killed and fed to sharks. Leon found the evidence in the room where the other party had lived. The videotape was originally hidden in the vent. Leon found it based on the clues left by the other party in various places, and the people on the ship did not find these clues before he boarded the ship. Otherwise, how could he be said to be lucky? On the other side, the team responsible for the Queen Semiramis was composed of ex-organization personnel disguised as FBI agents. They also gained something. By comparing the material numbers above, they confirmed that some of the materials came from FBC. Faced with these evidences, Morgan was still fighting. He said to FBI Director Burns, "These are all bad things done by Field. They have nothing to do with me. You have no evidence to prove that these are related to me." Burns said, "It has nothing to do with the FBC, with Field's salary, he can't afford to buy 3 cruise ships." A former researcher stationed by Triplex also accused you. The man only said that Sanley and Company cooperated with the FBC, and did not refer to me. Morgan repeated the same words, "It has nothing to do with me anyway. This is Field taking advantage of my trust to embezzle public funds." He already knew what Field had admitted as his confidant. At that time, he left everything to Field to handle it, just to clear his suspicions. Burns didn't bother with these, and added, "We have investigated the F.B.C's financial situation and found that the accounts are not correct. You asked the FBC Secretary of the Treasury about this." "I don't know." "Haha, we have already asked, and he said that he had already reported the situation, and you told him not to worry about it. He just needs to fill in the account. Accounts can be filled up, but things will not appear or disappear out of thin air. As long as you check whether each payment is implemented and whether the things are actually purchased, you can naturally find the problem." The finance minister was appointed jointly by all NATO countries. Although he knew Morgan, he was not a close confidant of the other party. The reason for settling the account for the other party is because Morgan has his own leverage. The leverage in Morgan's hands now is nothing compared to the current problems. The finance minister naturally knows what choice to make. Morgan sneered. Although he was now a suspect, he still maintained his arrogance and said, "You can't convict just by relying on oral confession. The other party is slandering me because I have evidence of his previous crimes." Burns didn't ask the Treasury Secretary about the issue because the other party had already told him. He sneered and said, "The Minister of Finance has a recording of his conversation with you. He asked me to tell you that these are the skills you taught him." At that time, Morgan used this trick to capture the other party's clues. Morgan was silent after hearing this. But Burns still didn't want to let the opponent go, and there would be no chance after that. He said, "Not only the Treasury Secretary, but there are many people from the FBC who provide us with information." Morgan's efforts to clean up the FBC bug offended many people. Now that news of Morgan's demise has come, these undercover agents have received orders to add fuel to the fire. At the same time, they are also planning an election for the commander of the FBC, hoping to carve up this big cake. However, the plans of these people with ulterior motives are doomed to failure. Morgan remains silent. He still hasn't figured out why he and the FBC have reached this point. This is called the Skynet being sparse and not leaking out, or it can be said that if you want others not to know, you can do nothing unless you do nothing. Whether in the game or here, when Morgan did something that went against the F.B.C's anti-biochemical mission, his and the FBC organization's fate was already sealed. Burns did not disclose any more information. In his opinion, the other party was just struggling to death. Although there is no evidence other than witness evidence that Morgan was involved in these crimes. But he felt that the lawsuit that Simmons hired to defeat 3 Morgan lawyers in a row would definitely defeat Morgan in court. Of course, whether the evidence is sufficient or not is false. In the end, it still depends on how the people above plan to deal with FBC and Morgan. A week later, President Summer has his own ideas about the current situation of the FBC. Although Morgan has been labeled as a heinous criminal in his heart, he is still the person chosen by the Lighthouse Country. As the recommender, the Lighthouse Country also has to bear certain responsibilities, so Morgan will only severely punish internally, and externally, Morgan will be asked to voluntarily resign. After Summer sorted out the evidence and other matters, he convened a meeting of all NATO member states. After all, this is a matter between NATO countries, so the Lighthouse Country naturally has to notify these countries first. After listening to the words of the President of the Lighthouse Country, the leaders of all the countries looked surprised. Regarding the matter related to the FBC and the Greyhound organization, President Summer followed Morgan's idea and put all the crimes on field, while Morgan only took the responsibility for dereliction of duty. Neglect of duty is already a very light responsibility compared to dereliction of duty. So what surprised leaders of various countries was actually the fact that the FBC was secretly studying biological viruses. All NATO countries with coastlines became extremely angry after hearing about the performance of the Taiwan virus and demanded severe punishment for those involved in this incident. President Summer said, "We are already doing it. I am calling everyone here this time. In addition to telling you about the investigation of the FBC organization, I also want to discuss how to deal with external public opinions related to the FBC next." "President, what do you think?" the British Prime Minister asked him directly. President Summer did not shirk and said directly, "Our Lighthouse Country recommends announcing the specific situation and then directly disbanding the FBC organization." In his opinion, the FBC organization was rotten from top to bottom. He also knew who was standing behind those who pushed Morgan down together, and knew exactly what those people were planning to do. After Morgan was gone, he didn't think the next people would be able to suppress these vampires. Rather than letting the FBC rot in the hands of these people, it is better to carve up the FBC while it is still healthy. Everyone was shocked when they heard President Summer's words. If other NATO countries had proposed this idea, no one would be surprised, but the FBC was originally proposed by the Lighthouse Country. We should be thankful that the Lighthouse Country did not use the FBC organization to extort processing fees from them. Today, the sun really rose from the west. The other party actually wanted to give up the FBC organization. What they didn't expect was what President Summer said next. "After the dissolution, I plan to split the human and material resources that originally belonged to the FBC organization, and all the personnel and materials in Europe will be incorporated into the BSAA organization." "What's the reason? We all invested in the FBC, are you going to send all of this to the BSAA to make wedding clothes for others?" The British Prime Minister didn't want his own investment to go down the drain. They hadn't enjoyed the protection of the FBC yet. The French president on the other side followed up, "Yes. Why not let us European countries share it together?" The leaders of other countries expressed their own ideas. They all wanted to divide up the FBC organization and take back their own share. As it concerns their own interests, they quarreled as expected. President Summer waited until they finished quarreling before speaking. "There is only one FBC, and you have so many people. How do you plan to divide it? Do you want to continue quarreling? Also, after you divide it, how do you plan to fight against the biochemical crisis in the future?" Everyone was speechless for a moment. They had just quarreled for so long, but they couldn't come up with a feasible distribution plan. The German Prime Minister thought that the Lighthouse Country might be the same as when it established the FBC organization this time. The meeting was just to notify them. So he said directly, "President Summer, just say what you think. I suggest that the FBC resources in Europe be merged into the BSAA organization to avoid quarrels and hurting the harmony." Everyone began to think. The French president who first proposed to divide the BSAA asked, Just the FBC resources in Europe. President Seymour smiled and said nothing, as if the other party asked a very stupid question. If the lighthouse country is not counted, the FBC will only have half of its strength. The pie has become smaller, and it will be more difficult to divide it. The Italian president thought it was a good idea and said, "This is a good suggestion. We can specify that the European branch of the BSAA will receive it, and we will still be the main beneficiaries." Some people agreed, and those countries with relatively weak national strength expressed their agreement. After all, if they really fight, these small NATO countries will definitely not be able to grab anything, and they will have to rely on BSAA for help when a biochemical crisis occurs. Of course, they can ask the NATO coalition, but the price they pay will definitely be much higher. After a group of small countries responded, other big countries also agreed after thinking about it. The most important biochemical virus research institutes of FBC are all in the lighthouse country, and these have been taken away by the lighthouse country. Then it's useless for them to take away the remaining firearms and equipment. As for antibiochemical matters, countries around the world are actually used to asking antibiochemical organizations for help, letting professionals solve professional problems. After all, the number of biochemical crises that occur in a year is not that many, and it costs a lot of money to maintain a professional antibiochemical force. Since all NATO countries agreed to this plan, President Seymour began to communicate with BSAA about handover and other matters. Oh, and there's also the stolen submarine from Italy. He also needs to have a good talk with Italy about the cost of getting the submarine back. Meow, Pierce is so young. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 529. As the conference held by the Lighthouse country came to an end, President Seymour and NATO countries began to launch a propaganda war based on the results of the discussion. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. In an instant, all the false remarks about the FBC on the internet and in the media were cleared. At the same time, the FBI took the initiative to say that they were investigating the FBC organization in conjunction with the BSAA organization, so that people would not believe in rumors or spread them. Many people just felt that the FBI and the FBC were birds of a feather, so they didn't believe it. But they had a good impression of the BSAA organization, so after learning that the BSAA organization was also participating in the investigation, they also settled down and waited and saw what would happen. Finally, half a month later, the results of the investigation came out. Both sides jointly held an investigation press conference. First, the director of the FBI of the Lighthouse country gave a summary, saying that after their investigation, they determined that what the Greyhound organization said was true. But after their investigation, they found that FBC Interior Minister Field was a sympathizer of the Greyhound organization, and he secretly embezzled FBC public funds to support the Greyhound organization. The two FBC agents who launched the attack were the ones he bribed. The purpose of the two people's attack that day was to rescue Field, who was taken away by the FBI for investigation, and then put the blame on the FBC organization. All other accusations were fabricated. If the statement stopped here, the public would definitely not believe it, but would think that it was sacrificing the car to save the driver, in order to preserve the reputation of the FBC. But Seymour had already anticipated these people's thoughts, so he decided to directly split and dissolve the FBC organization to cut off the source of the fire. In fact, if he wanted, he could just change the name and put it on the original FBC organization. There are many ways to fool the public. But President Seymour intends to take this opportunity to put his own stamp on the country's anti-biochemical organizations, so he decided to take over the American heritage of the FBC with the DSO organization led by Leon as the captain, and become a full-time anti-biochemical organization in the country. It just happened to cooperate with his conservative policy. He continued to focus on domestic economic development, while DSO and other agent organizations escorted him to ensure domestic stability. After the FBI director announced the conclusion of the investigation, O'Brien of the BSAA organization talked about his own investigation. He made a simple summary as soon as he opened his mouth. He mentioned that after they received the intelligence notification from the FBI, they immediately sent people to the Queen Zenobia for investigation and found that they were studying the antidote and vaccine for the new biochemical virus. The public who heard this were full of confusion. Isn't the FBC doing a good thing? They didn't understand until they heard the details disclosed by O'Brien. The matter of the three sister ships was said by Field in order to reduce his sentence. The reason why he funded the Greyhound organization was to bring down Morgan, so that his confidant could take over, and then use the biochemical virus to spread fear, control the FBC organization to solve the incident, and sell the antidote vaccine to gain profits. The research data found on the Queen Zenobia, which the BSAA organization is responsible for, proves that selling antidote vaccines to gain profits. O'Brien did not lie, they did not find any other evidence from this ship. The surviving researchers knew that they were from the FBC, but they were researching vaccines and antidotes for new biochemical viruses, and they knew nothing else, so naturally they could not prove anything. These people were temporarily taken in by the X organization, allowing them to continue to shine and research vaccines and antidotes. In this case, Field's confession of surrender became very critical. O'Brien then mentioned the stolen submarine and posted a thank you video specially recorded by the Italian president. The other party said that the African branch of the BSAA encountered its own stolen submarine while investigating the Queen Zenobia, and finally overcame all difficulties to defeat the enemy and recapture the submarine for them. At the end of the video is a photo of a Sorrow-class submarine and the Queen Zenobia moored together. It is well known that the submarine was stolen by the Greyhound organization. It just confirmed that Field and the Greyhound organization were connected. After he finished talking about the BSAA investigation, the FBI director did not give everyone time to think. He immediately said that no evidence was found on other queens to prove that other people were involved in this incident. Instead, it was found that the remnants of the Tri-Union Company were involved in the development of biochemical viruses. In general, both the FBI and the BSAA organization said that they had no evidence to prove that the entire FBC organization had problems, and could only confirm that Field and the Greyhound organization were related. After both sides finished their investigation reports, reporters raised their hands to ask questions. FBI Director Burns and O'Brien each answered a few questions. Then President Seymour came on stage and said, "I just listened to your questions." Many people doubted the FBC organization, especially Morgan's involvement in these things. "I also understand your concerns, so I have decided to disband the FBC organization." In this way, even if the public doubts their investigation results, they will not say anything more. Instead, they will admire President Seymour's decisive abandonment and successfully establish the image of sacrificing relatives for the sake of justice. With the guidance of public opinion, the credibility crisis of the FBC caused by the Greyhound organization finally came to an end. Field was imprisoned and eventually drowned in prison due to an accident. Morgan first resigned and issued a resignation statement. After completing the play arranged by the Lighthouse Country, he retired and returned to his hometown, living under the surveillance of the FBI. As the director of the African branch of the BSAA, Luo Guang was naturally blocked by reporters after the investigation press conference. If he wanted, there were actually various ways to get rid of reporters, such as changing his appearance directly. The reason why he accepted the interview was to complete Simmons's task. "You all stay quiet and listen to my answer." Luo Guang first stopped the chattering reporters and replied, "The submarine was near the ship at the time, and a biochemical crisis broke out on the ship, and people sent by the submarine attacked us. The helicopter pilot also died." He did not lie, and the "we" here refers to him and the helicopter pilot. Then how did your BSAA take back the submarine? The FBC was disbanded, so there was nothing to ask. The reporter from Italy wanted to know how their country's submarine was taken back. The enemy wanted to run away when they couldn't defeat them. I changed my clothes and sneaked in while the enemy was running away. Then I attacked the enemy in the boat and held on until the support arrived. The reporters were very surprised and didn't believe it at first, but when they thought of Luo Guang, who had single-handedly solved the company's chaos, they were relieved. These people immediately wrote furiously, ready to add fuel to the fire to win more traffic. Although Luo Guang was not impatient, he still stopped the interview on the grounds of being busy with official business. He now has the image of a good person and can easily be pointed at by others, so he is worried that those reporters will go too far. One of the reporters watched Luo Guang leave and returned to the car with a smile full of gains. After changing the place, she restrained her smile, looked around, and confirmed that there was no one in the parking lot. Then she made a phone call to report the intelligence she had collected. The processed neutral voice of the other party sounded from the phone. Are you sure it was him who killed our people? It should be. He was not at the headquarters on the day of the accident. He was carrying out an investigation mission. Bar Book 69 knew. I know, your mission is over. The other party issued an order and hung up the phone. The man said to the people around him, the people sent out have reported the situation. Our son should have been killed by Luo Guang, and he is a battle-hardened S-level adapter. Our son is definitely not his opponent, which is also in line with the situation. These two people are the parents of James Lee, an S-level adapter. The father's name is Li Qingxian, and the mother's name is Xena Venus. The people who broke into our house were also sent by the other party. Xena's face was full of anger. Although they have many children, James is the only S-level, so she loves him especially. She even used her privileges to let her son, who was supposed to practice on A-level tasks, do this kind of B-level task. Unexpectedly, his son ran into a tough guy and died. Li Qingxian said, I don't know the details, but I think so. He knew his wife was full of anger, so he didn't keep her in suspense, and then gave the reason. Not only us, but everyone whose son knows the surface identity has problems. Our son can't betray the organization. He is a noble S-level adapter, Xena yelled at her husband. No matter what, this situation must be related to the failure of our son's mission. Li Qingxian said this because he was sure that his son leaked the information. As a father, how could he not know who James is? He is lazy and eats every day, and he complains to his mother when he is told a few words. He relies on his S-level and doesn't exercise seriously, and he is tired of asking him to exercise with him. How can such an untrained person survive torture? So he didn't tell his son the key information of the organization. Li Qingxian is very disappointed with his son. Xena said, when will the organization go for revenge? The organization has no plans for revenge. What? An S-class adapter of the organization died? How could they be indifferent? Xena didn't believe it and shouted, are you lying to me? If the organization didn't have this plan, how could they let us confirm the situation? They were in a well-insulated underground safe house, so Li Qingxian didn't stop the other party from shouting. He felt that the other party had lost the ability to think because of James' death, and directly said the answer. Confirming the situation and whether to take revenge are two different things, and don't you understand the organization? Yes, S-class adapters are indeed precious and important, but dead S-class are far less precious than living S-class. There was one sentence he didn't say, otherwise the two would have to fight immediately. Li Qingxian was as angry as his wife at first, but the words of the 12 seats above woke him up. Once the road of evolution begins, you can only move forward all the way. Behind you is not a retreat, but a cliff. James won at the starting line, but chose to be content with the status quo on the road of evolution. He heard the contentment of the status quo here. I'm not talking about James who died without value, But about these S-class adapters who lived a life of luxury. Aren't they the ones who were content with the status quo and stopped evolving? That's why his and Hina's education failed so badly, because they thought they could live a carefree life like this. It was our doting that killed James. This is what Li Qingxian didn't say. Although this sentence was not said, the previous words were enough to make Hina angry. She said, "I won't let that guy join us, since the organization won't help. Let's go and avenge our son." Luo Guang actually thought about the possibility that James' parents would seek revenge on him. After all, he grew up watching stories about beating the younger and the older. But he was not worried about himself, but about the safety of Jill and Ashley. So he specially made 2 female clones and arranged them near the 2 of them, and told them about it. At the same time, Luo Guang had asked Hong Huang to find out if there were any black technology equipment in the technical library of Umbrella Company, and equipped them for both of them at that time. Regarding the bodyguard, Luo Guang first told Ashley beside him. Ashley, who was of average combat power, agreed to the arrangement directly, and then expressed her concerns. Is there any trouble? If there was no trouble, why would the other party suddenly arrange a bodyguard for her? Although her father was also a little powerful, she knew that what Luo Guang was facing now was definitely not something her father could help with, so she did not ask her father to help. This time, Luo Guang did not hide anything. After confirming that the house was safe, he told Ashley about the Apocalypse organization. He continued, "Although I don't know what this group of people are doing, they are definitely not doing charity. So I have to wrong you during this period." "No, you are not going to leave me," Ashley said sympathetically. "Instead, I am dragging you down, but I will take care of myself." Luo Guang, who was sympathetic, knew that Ashley said this to take care of his emotions, so he would not make any gestures or words of agreement. He replied, "You didn't drag me down. In fact, you have helped me a lot every time I feel tired. It is your gentleness that soothes my heart." Ashley has always been most worried that she is not good at fighting, so she can't go to the battlefield with Luo Guang and share the burden for him. But hearing this, she couldn't help but smile and decided to take the initiative to reward Luo Guang tonight. Otherwise, when the bodyguards come later, they won't have so many opportunities. After Luo Guang finished with Ashley, he contacted Jill. "It's rare to do it so early, and you are doing it again." Jill's words were full of jealousy. Luo Guang replied, "If you want, you can quit your job at any time and come here with me. I will support you." "Tisk, who cares about you supporting me? I can also make money. And how can I quit my job now? I am so busy with the FBC thing." Of course, that's what she said, but Jill still wanted to live with Luo Guang in her heart, hoping to hear his voice and see his face sleeping in every morning when she wakes up. "You should learn to slack off, know how to use people, and you can also relax a little." Luo Guang didn't know what the other party was thinking. After comforting him, he told him what he wanted to say. Both sides' mobile phones were specially made by Hong Huang, and they took exclusive routes and would not be monitored by others. "I knew you had something serious to talk to me about," Jill then said. "I don't need a bodyguard, I can take care of myself. And we can solve any enemies together." But this time Luo Guang said firmly, "Sorry, but the most important thing for you now is to protect your own safety. The enemy is more powerful than you think, even you can't deal with it now." Jill's mutation is mainly concentrated in physical fitness, and there is no other special ability except recovery. And Luo Guang verified one thing from his battle with Wesker. Having many skills and many trump cards means you can do whatever you want. Jill didn't reply for a while. This time Luo Guang's tone was as serious as his words in the company turmoil. Unlike Ashley, she was more rational and answered, "I know, but if you encounter any difficult enemies, be sure to call me. Don't worry, when the time is right, I will definitely call you and others to deal with the enemy together." Luo Guang made his promise. "Meow, Complete. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 530. Although he might be targeted by the enemy, Luo Guang would not stay in a safe place all day. His life went on as usual, with his ability to sense killing intent, eating and drinking as usual, and the rhythm of life on the surface did not change at all. In addition to being busy with the affairs of the BSAA organization, Luo Guang had two things to deal with. The first thing was Shirley's return to daily life. The other thing was related to the current Minister of Defense Wilson, which was what he promised Leon and Claire. The person he arranged had contact with Wilson and successfully infected him with the Shinra virus. But Luo Guang did not immediately start the plan to let Wilson reveal the dirty things he had done. Because this matter would inevitably affect President Seymour, who nominated Wilson as Minister of Defense. And the current president of the Lighthouse State had just disbanded the FBC organization and expanded its resources to the DSO led by Leon. Luo Guang was worried that Wilson's surrender would cause a chain reaction, causing Seymour to step down at an inappropriate time, resulting in the failure of Leon's plan to expand his power. So he had to wait until DSO had digested the legacy of FBC and truly established a firm foothold before pulling Wilson down. Leon could understand Luo Guang's idea. Anti-biochemical forces were not much to begin with, and now FBC was gone. However, he gave Luo Guang a planned schedule for the entire FBC resources so that the other party would have an idea. As for Claire, Luo Guang also took the initiative to contact her and asked her to wait patiently for a while. Speaking of Claire, she returned to Pannenstein after spending the new year with Shirley. Although she went there because of the biochemical crisis that occurred there, she wanted to provide humanitarian relief to the victims there, such as psychological counseling. But this land is more of a desolate place left by the war, and those homeless war refugees. When she learned about the true situation in Pannenstein, she hoped that Terra Sever could help these refugees through the difficulties. The leader of Terra Sever directly rejected Claire's request to take in war refugees. Regardless of whether he had good intentions or not, the reason why he rejected the other party was that there were many more war refugees in Pannenstein than victims of the biochemical crisis, and the supplies they brought were not enough to distribute to most of the refugees, and there were not enough people to maintain the security of the camp. The person in charge knew that he must not open this loophole when the supplies were insufficient, otherwise it would be easy for their camp to be looted by refugees who were trying to survive. Losing some supplies was already the best result. He knew that Claire was a lighthouse countryman. In that chaotic situation, there must be lawless people who targeted these lighthouse country volunteers and vented their resentment towards the lighthouse country. As long as someone started it, even if there were many women in the volunteer team from other countries, they would suffer. Of course, this person in charge and Claire had cooperated many times. He knew that even if he had told the other party the reason, the other party would definitely not give up, but would find another way or even find a few like-minded people to act together. Since he was the person in charge of this mission, he could not let any member be in danger. So he offered to help Claire explain the situation to his superiors to see if there were any other solutions. Unexpectedly, the top management of Terra Sever held a meeting with the Lighthouse country, and then held a meeting with the United Nations, and then agreed to the request of the person in charge. Charity is a business, otherwise why do so many rich people like to set up charity funds? The decision-makers of Terra Sever intend to take this opportunity to expand their business scope and make their business bigger and stronger. They contacted the Lighthouse country to confirm its attitude towards Pannenstein, and held a meeting with the United Nations to ensure the safety of their own team. In the country of Pannenstein, the Lighthouse country's army is the strongest, but it is also the most hated by the locals. Therefore, Terra Sever's request for the Lighthouse country's army to protect them is to seek death, and will only fall into various attacks. So they hope that the United Nations will send peacekeeping forces to protect them and establish a new refugee camp. The United Nations has also established a humanitarian relief camp in Pannenstein to rescue local war refugees. So they did not agree to the other party's intervention at first. After all, Pannenstein has only so many peacekeeping forces, and if they are dispersed, they will not be able to protect both sides. In the end, it was Terezifer's money that solved the problem. Claire was naturally very happy to hear the news. It happened that Luo Guang called her when she was in a good mood, so Claire readily said that she would wait patiently. After all, it is not easy to bring down a defense minister, and she is more concerned about the refugees in front of her now. In this way, Luo Guang temporarily suspended his plan against Wilson. He called Simmons again without stopping and told him about Shirley directly. "Boss, I want Shirley to return to a normal life." Simmons was shocked. Although Luo Guang was his confidant, he couldn't do it with such a frivolous tone and disrespectful attitude. He frowned, thinking of finding an opportunity to knock Luo Guang, and replied, "Why do you suddenly mention this? Are you asking for your two friends?" He naturally knew the relationship between Luo Guang and Leon, Claire, and others, and Luo Guang didn't hide it from him. Luo Guang is no longer the same person he was before. He chose to join the X organization from an outside member because he wanted to enjoy the shade under the big tree. After all, this family organization is the strongest underground organization in the setting of the Resident Evil game, and its style of behavior is relatively normal. It will not think of using the power in its hands to destroy the world. As for ruling the world, this matter has nothing to do with Luo Guang, who was a petty citizen at the time, so he naturally would not delve into it. But now he is fully grown and has the full support of the Donald family, so even if his relationship with Simmons is strained, there will be no problem. He is respectful to the other party by not calling him Xioxi now. But after all, it is related to Shirley, so Luo Guang still puts his attitude in order and answers seriously, "Yes, I asked for my friend. To be honest, with the scientific research strength of our organization, we would have succeeded long ago if we really wanted to research results." He speaks frankly and does not intend to lie. Although the Institute has made several breakthroughs, there has been no results, and it has not brought much benefit to the organization. Simmons used the computer to retrieve the situation of the Institute where Shirley was imprisoned and read it from the beginning. It was indeed as Luo Guang said. The Research Institute had not achieved much in recent years. It was only after Kara took over that it started to improve. Last year, it made a few products that could make a little money, but no new products were launched since then. Kara's report showed that unless there was a new breakthrough, it would be difficult to make any progress. In fact, how could Kara, who was so smart, not be able to make any progress? It was just that she changed her research direction and no longer focused on Shirley. Simmons didn't know that Kara, his personal confidant, was secretly planning various things because of her rebellious youth. He was not so good at research, so he was naturally deceived by Kara. Luo Guang waited quietly. He had already investigated the situation before calling. After reading it, Simmons was also thinking in his heart. The reason why he became Shirley's guardian was not because he was a Lolita control, and he didn't have the idea of a child bride. He was not the only one who knew that Shirley had the G virus in her body. The government and the president of the lighthouse country also knew about it, so they had to forcibly contain and monitor Shirley. It was he who fought to become Shirley's guardian and transferred her to the X organization's Research Institute for containment. At least under His Majesty, those researchers did not dare to do anything too extreme to Shirley. He even cared about Shirley, so he allowed Claire, a civilian, to enter the highly confidential Research Institute to visit Shirley. Even if he didn't help him find Ada, Simmons still admired Luo Guang, a capable and unambitious person. It was mentioned before that the X organization would restrict the promotion channels for such latecomers, which led to him now having no rewards. Although Luo Guang never asked for rewards, The other party was very satisfied with his current life according to the investigation results. But this was not an excuse for him, the leader, not to reward meritorious officials. This time, the other party made a request, and he felt that if it was confirmed that there was no problem, Luo Guang's idea might be satisfied. Simmons suddenly asked, "How do you ensure that Shirley will not spread the G virus?" Luo Guang knew there was a chance when he heard this, otherwise how could the other party ask such a question? He replied, "Shirley's infectiousness has been confirmed. As long as the wound does not come into contact with her blood, there will be no danger. The G virus in her blood cannot survive in the air for a long time without Shirley. Luo Guang has his own way to solve this problem, so he is not worried about it at all. Shirley has been away from normal society for a long time. Are you sure she can adapt to the new life? She is still young now. Judging from her performance after leaving the institute, she should be able to adapt." Simmons kept asking questions to understand Luo Guang or his friend's plan. Luo Guang also answered fluently and answered the other party's questions one by one. After asking the questions, Simmons did not answer immediately, but just said that he would think about it and hung up the phone. He did not put down the phone, and then called Kara to confirm Shirley's research situation. Because Kara is sometimes busy with research and will answer the phone slowly, Simmons waited patiently. After 5 rings, the phone was connected, and Kara's slightly tired voice sounded, "I am Kara. It's me. I want to ask you about Shirley's situation." Simmons told Luo Guang's story. Now that Kara's new virus has been developed and can reproduce on its own, Shirley no longer needs to provide a stable G virus. She also has some good feelings for Shirley, so she naturally doesn't mind Shirley leaving the institute. The only pity is that Luo Guang made this request a little late. Luo Guang soon received a reply from Simmons, saying that Kara was going to conduct a final investigation to confirm whether Shirley was still useful for the research, so he couldn't give him the results immediately. He could understand Kara's caution. Although they, the researchers, had been studying Shirley for several years, what if this last breakthrough was made? So Luo Guang didn't bother Simmons or Kara again, nor did he report the matter to Leon and the others in advance. As for the arrangements for Shirley after she left the institute, he wanted her to settle down at the GIMZ base in South Africa. Leon and Claire are both very busy people, especially Leon is now focusing on DSO, while Claire went directly to Pannenstein to volunteer, so they have no time to take care of Shirley. Chris is also very busy. Luo Guang heard that he had taken a fancy to a newcomer, and there happened to be an investigation mission in Asia, so he personally took people to train. Although Shirley has grown up, she has few social practice classes. In addition, the G virus in her body and the fact that she was targeted by the apocalypse made it too dangerous for her to live alone. Shirley has a friend named Jack in the GIMZ base, and the other party's social experience can also teach her so that she will not be so easily deceived. The most important thing is that Wu Song's clone is basically stationed in the base and can protect Shirley's safety at any time. Luo Guang was thinking about how to persuade Shirley to settle in South Africa, and he was also busy with today's BSAA work. Unexpectedly, Simmons called in less than a day. "I need you to go back to the lighthouse to investigate something." Simmons' tone was solemn, as if something big had happened. Luo Guang did not refuse or negotiate, and decisively replied, "I know. I will arrange the plane right away. Let Ashley book the ticket, and also tell Deputy Minister Magwan, and trouble him to look after the house again." Simmons said, "The plane is ready, you can go downstairs after you arrange it, the car is on the way." "Got it?" "What happened?" Luo Guang asked for details in advance. Simmons said with a little anger, "The research institute where Kara is located was attacked, and the casualties were heavy. Kara and Shirley were taken away. I have sent people to investigate the situation. You are responsible for investigating this matter." He did not suspect that it was Luo Guang, or Leon, who were very familiar with Shirley. The reason is very simple: they have no reason to kidnap Kara. In addition, if they want to do this, Luo Guang does not need to contact him today to talk about Shirley. It is too redundant to do so. That's why he will leave this matter to Luo Guang. When Luo Guang heard the news, his hands paused, and the first thought in his mind was that the Apocalypse organization was not giving up and sent someone to kidnap Shirley again. Although he didn't know Kara's specific adaptability, Kara could also merge with the virus in the game settings. It seemed that her adaptability was comparable to Shirley's, so the enemy would kidnap Kara as well. I see Simmons hung up the phone as soon as he finished speaking. He was still thinking about asking a few questions. After hanging up the phone, Simmons thought to himself that no matter who did it, he would definitely not let the other party look good, while using the computer to contact other people to issue the latest instructions. He had a lot of things to arrange. Compared with voice calls, emails were safer and more convenient for his subordinates to repeat and confirm their orders. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 531. Luo Guang explained the situation to Ashley and his deputy minister, and then got on the special car arranged by Simmons with reluctance. Ashley was reluctant to let Luo Guang leave, and she had to spend this time alone. Deputy Minister Guan was reluctant because he would have to work every day again after he left. Luo Guang got on the car, took the X organization pad machine handed over by the co-pilot, and checked the latest content after entering the password. In order to keep confidentiality, each machine has a special access range and password. So although it was handed over by the co-pilot, the other party was only responsible for delivering the machine and did not know the specific password, so he could not check the content. Luo Guang checked the clues collected now. The enemy did things neatly and seemed to be very familiar with all the situations of the Institute. All the external sentries were unplugged, and they even knew the location of the cables of the Institute and destroyed the main power supply system. Before the backup power supply of the Institute was activated, there was a 1-minute power outage time and computer start-up time. When the closed-circuit television was back online, the enemy had already entered the Institute. All of these people wore various animal masks and held a variety of weapons, but they all used NATO standard rifle bullets, and their movements were very skilled, and they looked well trained. The security personnel responsible for protecting Kara in the X organization were also elite soldiers, but these attackers showed an overwhelming advantage over the security personnel in the Institute. After entering the Institute, even if it was an indoor battle, the difficulty of this kind of battle was obvious to all, but the attackers could almost be said to have swept away the opponents with a crushing attitude. Luo Guang suddenly clicked the pause button on the screen, enlarged the video, and then processed this small area in high definition. After slowing down for 3 seconds again, he confirmed that an enemy was shot in the clavicle but did not react. Not only did his body not shake, but his face did not change, and he looked like a tough Terminator. After finding a few more videos, Luo Guang found that this was not an isolated case, and several attackers were in the same situation. After extracting this content, he marked it with a note and sent it to the cloud to extract more information for the intelligence analysts of the X organization. Simmons saw the content sent by Luo Guang and nodded. It hadn't been long since he called the other party, and the other party had found a clue. This efficiency still satisfied him. Luo Guang felt more and more that this incident was done by the Apocalypse organization. But he didn't rush to draw conclusions and continued to watch the surveillance. The following surveillance videos were more scattered. Because as the security of the Institute became less and less, the enemy began to free up their hands to deal with the closed-circuit television covered with bulletproof glass. They didn't shoot and break the camera. Bullets hitting the hemispherical glass might cause stray bullets, so they adopted a traditional method. Use an inkjet bottle to directly spray the glass black, so that the surveillance naturally can't check the situation. Doing this requires being very close to the camera, so the enemy didn't do this at the beginning, and took the time to eliminate the security personnel who blocked it. Kara's office didn't have surveillance installed, so he didn't see how the other party was captured. It's just that Luo Guang was a little strange. Considering the other party's IQ and importance, he would definitely be escorted to evacuate from the secret passage as soon as possible. It's impossible for him to stay here and be captured. Although the enemy is strong and advances quickly, there is a secret passage in the office, so there must be enough time to leave. Thinking of this, Luo Guang looked for the remaining surveillance videos. There is no surveillance in the secret passage, only surveillance cameras around the exit. As a result, he watched the video of the day and did not see anyone leaving the shop covering the secret passage. Luo Guang wrote this down and then confirmed Shirley's situation. Unlike Kara, Shirley's place has surveillance cameras installed. Of course, there are no surveillance cameras installed in the toilet and shower room inside. Then he saw Shirley was knocked unconscious by the attackers who broke in and was taken away in a sack. From the closed-circuit televisions at the door that were not sprayed black at the beginning, he saw that the enemy carried 2 sacks away. Probably because of this reason, when the people of the X organization checked the casualties of the attacked research institute, they found that Kara and Shirley were not there, and combined with the surveillance situation, they determined that the 2 sacks were Kara and Shirley. The enemy's entire operation did not take much time, so Luo Guang had watched all the videos when he arrived at the airport. While he was waiting for the plane to take off, James Lee's parents landed at the same airport. The 2 parties just passed by and missed each other. They just got off the plane and turned off the flight mode when they received the text message. The temporary mobile phone also showed several missed calls. Li Qingxian opened the text message, with a disappointed expression on his face, and said, "It was sent by someone I hired." He said that Luo Guang left the headquarters half an hour ago and went to the airport. Although he did not agree with Zena's behavior of violating the organization's decision, the other party was his wife after all, and he was worried that his wife would be killed by the enemy, so he followed the other party. In order to avoid being discovered by the organization, they did not use the organization's resources, but could only spend money to hire someone to track Luo Guang and confirm his whereabouts. At the same time, they bought a temporary mobile phone and phone card to contact the informant. In order not to attract attention, they turned on the flight mode after getting on the plane, so they did not receive the intelligence in time. Airport. Here, Zena understood what the other party meant in an instant. Li Qingxian nodded and said, "Not long after getting on the plane." As soon as he finished speaking, the other party sent another text message. The target took off. Li Qingxian said the content of the new text message, "Let's get in the car first to discuss what to do next." They asked someone to prepare a car for them here. Damn it, Zena cursed angrily, walked out, and left Li Qingxian with his luggage. After the 2 got in the car, Zena, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, said, "The other party left alone." Li Qingxian knew his wife very well and said, "You want to attack Luo Guang's girlfriend?" "Why? No. The other party is just Luo Guang's girlfriend, not his wife. When will the revenge end? We can't spread the attack. Li Qingxian has now violated the organization's order, but he doesn't want to make a big deal." Zena glared and said angrily, "Our son is dead, and you are still talking about this. Is it too much for us to collect a little interest now?" Li Qingxian said, "From the perspective of revenge, if we take action now, it will only attract the attention of the other party, and the gains will not outweigh the losses." He then said from another perspective, lowering his voice, "Besides, the identities of our other children have also been leaked. Do you think the other party has more girlfriends? Or do we have more children? When the other party chases our children and beats them, which one can we protect? Do you want the organization to clean up our mess? Xena said unwillingly, I won't leave any clues. All the way, Li Qingxian's patience was almost exhausted. Rightward arrow. Without the concessions he made to take care of his wife's feelings before, he suppressed his anger and said, Xena, I'll say it for the last time, you can't expand this revenge. Since the reason doesn't make sense, then don't talk about it. Xena glared at the other party. She didn't expect Li Qingxian to say such a thing. After so many years of marriage, it was the first time she heard the other party use this tone, and replied nonchalantly, Are you going to rebel? Li Qingxian frowned and replied in a deep voice, You are the one who rebelled. Have you forgotten the order of the organization? I have given in to you for most of my life. Do you really think I am afraid of you? I just respect you. Hee, you didn't dare to take revenge when your son died. Why are you pretending to be a man now? However, Li Qingxian's retreat over the years made Xena really think that he was henpecked, so she did not back down, but cursed back. Are you brainless? If I don't dare to take revenge, why should I follow you? Li Qingxian felt that this couldn't go on any longer. His wife didn't seem to be an S-class adapter at all, and revenge didn't rely on impulse, but on the brain. You dare. Xena, who was speaking, suddenly felt a little scared. Her instinct reminded her to pay attention to her tone of voice, which made her stop unconsciously before she finished speaking. She looked at Li Qingxian, but felt that he had become very strange. There was no previous affection and humility in his eyes, only indifference. Li Qingxian was different from Xena, but he was an S-class adapter who survived the modern battlefield where he was in danger of death. He just restrained his edge after getting married. Although they were both S-class, Xena felt the oppression of facing the strong. The anger in his mind disappeared like a bucket of cold water. Hina turned from a tiger into a Garfield cat, nodded obediently to agree with the other party's opinion, and then turned his head to sulk. After landing, Luo Guang immediately rushed to the attacked research institute for a field investigation. He found the person in charge of the scene and took over the investigation report summarized so far from the other party. The investigator, who had been busy without closing his eyes, did not feel that his credit was taken away. Simmons gave a death order this time, but judging from the situation on the scene, this was not an easy job. He would rather throw this troublesome matter to others. Well, Luo Guang did not find any useful information from the investigation report. The enemy's biological information has not yet been produced. Luo Guang had found the locations where several enemies were injured before and asked them to collect blood to see if they could lock the enemy's identity by matching DNA. The people of the X organization can still work, after all, their salaries are really high. The man replied, It has been collected. But the person who checked found that there seemed to be an unknown virus in the blood, so for safety reasons, they have to send it to a safer place for testing. Luo Guang asked, Unknown virus? T-virus and other conventional viruses should be detected immediately. Did the Apocalypse organization change the virus? Or did other enemies do this? Just as he was thinking, the other party replied, Yes, we have compared the data in the database. Fortunately, we have taken antivirus measures in advance, so we did not get infected. After all, the research institute where the accident happened contained biological and chemical viruses, so they did not dare to enter without protection, even if the surveillance did not show that the enemy had entered the virus storage room. Air testing is safe. Luo Guang quickly found what he wanted to know based on the index. Yes. Luo Guang thought for a while, looked at the person in charge of the scene with bloodshot eyes, and said, I will go to reinvestigate the scene, you go to rest first. Tell me when the virus test results are out. Yes, the other party waved his hand and walked towards the temporary camp. Luo Guang entered the research institute and followed the enemy's attack route. This matter involves Kara. He doesn't know if it is a precursor to the plot of Resident Evil 6, but now he no longer has the intelligence advantage in this regard. So he doesn't plan to make inferences based on the plot of the game for the time being. As he walked, Luo Guang was also recalling the situation of the raid in his mind, and soon he came to Kara's office. The enemy went to Kara's office first, so was the other party's real target actually Kara? He scanned the situation in the room with doubts. The desk was a mess, but the place where Kara usually did small experiments was still neatly arranged. Luo Guang tilted his head. Kara was not doing research at the time. In that case, it was not because she was too focused on the experiment and misjudged the enemy's strength that she ran a step slower and was caught. The confidentiality level of the previous on-site person in charge was not enough, so the other party did not know the location of the secret passage of the institute and other information, and Luo Guang had to open the secret passage himself for inspection. But after he pressed the switch, the secret passage door did not respond at all, did not open, and did not make a jamming sound. The current power supply of the institute is normal, so there was a problem with the secret passage, which prevented Kara from leaving the secret passage and was finally caught. There is still a manual way to open the secret passage, but that method requires a certain amount of human strength, and Kara's small body definitely can't open it. Unfortunately, the security personnel at that time were all sent to stop the enemy. There was no survivor, so naturally it was impossible to understand who gave the order for the entire army to attack. Luo Guang took out the pad to confirm the maintenance of the secret passage and found that the entire institute had only been overhauled this year, so it shouldn't have gone wrong so soon. Unless there was something wrong with the maintenance worker who overhauled the secret passage. He thought of this possibility at the first time and immediately contacted the person in charge of the maintenance to investigate. Looking through the things on the desk, most of them were research materials. Luo Guang quickly browsed and checked the research content while looking at whether Kara had left any clues on it. He collected and sorted them one by one because it was too messy and easy to miss something. Luo Guang found a treasure detector-like thing under a piece of paper. It looked a bit like a smartphone integrated with a selfie stick. He quickly searched the pad and asked a few researchers from the X organization to confirm that this thing was not a research device. The screen was black, and it was not powered on. Luo Guang found the power button, looked at the longitude and latitude displayed on the screen, and said to himself, "Is this a locator? So is this the clue left by Kara?" Turning on the positioning and navigation function of the pad, Luo Guang compared the longitude and latitude to confirm the location of the positioning point, which was in a nearby city. I just don't know if the person carrying the locator is Kara. After confirming the situation on Kara's side, he went to Shirley's room to check again, but did not find any new clues. Because Shirley had to check and take a shower every day, Luo Guang did not think of leaving pheromones for tracking on her. Naturally, there was no special means to track Shirley, so he did not go to Shirley to investigate immediately. After confirming that there were no useful clues in the institute, he notified the person in charge on the scene and made a report to Simmons. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 532. Taiwanese novel network rightward arrow. Simmons asked after listening to Luo Guang's briefing, "Have you found Kara?" "It may be Kara. I can't confirm it now." "Where is the location?" "I'll send someone over." "Wait, the other party has hostages now, we have to be cautious and not alert the enemy." Luo Guang thought Simmons was going to send a large army to wipe out the enemy. The other party said, "You are a celebrity now, not suitable for this mission." "I can just disguise myself." Luo Guang was not worried about this and replied, "I will go to the location to confirm the situation first to avoid this being a trap left by the enemy." "Boss, you just need to send 2 assault teams and prepare support troops for me." He was worried that this was a flaw left by the enemy on purpose, and then tricked people over to kill them. Simmons thought about it and the other party made sense. Although there is strength in numbers, now they need more precise scalpels to accurately eliminate the enemy and rescue the hostages. I understand. We must protect the hostages. There is no rush for revenge. Got it. Luo Guang and Simmons determined the details of the next action. He set out first to confirm the location. The location was a 4-story apartment building on the outskirts of the city. Coincidentally, the name of the city was Boston. The Apocalypse organization had previously bombed here. Luo Guang couldn't help but wonder if this was the enemy's old trick. After changing his appearance, he went around the location and confirmed the surrounding situation first. The people living in this area were not rich people, but people who were struggling to make ends meet. The apartment building was probably uninhabited at this time. No one turned on the lights at night, and the security guard at the gate was not there. The door lock had been pried off and thrown on the ground by the vandal. It might not be done by the kidnappers, but by the homeless. After spending a little money, Luo Guang got information about the apartment building from a homeless old man nearby as a real estate agent. At first, the apartment building did become a place for homeless people to settle down. But a few months ago, this apartment building was haunted. It wasn't that the drug addicts who entered the apartment to spend the night were hallucinating, but that a homeless person really disappeared in the apartment. There are always people who don't believe in superstition, and as a result, everyone who lives in it who doesn't believe in superstition has disappeared. Over time, the story of this apartment building was passed on by word of mouth among the homeless, and it became a forbidden area. Even though they knew that they might be able to pick up the few remaining properties of other homeless people, no one dared to go in. The old homeless man also spoke out about this taboo because the real estate developer behind the other party planned to acquire this area and could provide jobs for many homeless people. Luo Guang is a firm materialist and doesn't believe that there are monsters in the world, but there is no smoke without fire, and there must be something wrong here. He believes that the enemy started preparing a few months ago and spread rumors here, so that the homeless people here dare not enter the apartment to cover up their tracks. In a real makeover, Luo Guang disguised himself as a homeless man, carrying a patched red, white, and blue bag, and looked as if he hadn't showered for a long time. By the way, he temporarily stored things like the R-9 pistol, including mobile phones and watches, in the newly made clone, and he didn't bring any important items with him. Then he walked into the apartment building with tired steps like a new homeless man. The dust inside was blown up by the cold wind that blew in after the door was opened. Luo Guang could actually hold his breath without being affected, but it was very inconsistent, so he pretended to choke. He emitted electromagnetic waves to scan the surrounding environment, and did not scan any hidden cameras, but he found a mechanism under the floor. This mechanism is not a death trap, but more like a weight scale, probably used as a gravity sensing device. The floor is old and rotten, and even if someone feels a little soft when stepping on it, they will not think there is a problem under the floor. The enemy probably knows that someone has entered the abandoned apartment in this way. Luo Guang did not take the initiative to look for the enemy's traces, but went to the second floor, pretending to find a place to spend the night. Soon he found a room with a messy dust on the ground, which seemed to suggest that someone had struggled on the ground here. Luo Guang put down the bag, took out the tattered quilt inside, and spread it on the ground skillfully. The reason for putting double quotes is that this quilt is sewn together with pieces of tattered clothes. The overall size is relatively large, directly taking into account the functions of padding and covering the body. These are the camouflage props prepared by the X organization for him, and they also emit a bad smell. After making a simple early warning trap with fishing line, cans and wooden sticks at the door, he lay back and closed his eyes. Time passed, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. A wisp of smoke entered the room from the crack of the door, but Luo Guang did not wake up. This smoke has a hypnotic effect and can make people sleep soundly. Soon someone came in, not caring about the clanging early warning device at all. Luo Guang was still pretending to sleep, letting the other party carry him on his back. Strangely, the enemy did not search him, as if he was confident of the effect of the hypnotic smoke. He was carried downstairs, to Harry's room under the stairs, and finally into the basement. The enemy pressed one of the bricks on one side of the wall in the basement, and then the secret passage opened. The enemy couldn't see Luo Guang's face, so he could take the opportunity to remember the location of the mechanism. After going down, someone else came to his side, but neither of them spoke, and directly handed Luo Guang to another person. When this person brought him to the place of imprisonment, he suddenly jumped up, holding a dagger made of hardened armor, and stabbed it directly into the back of the enemy's head, killing the enemy and injecting the Shinra virus at the same time. Then he licked the blood from the blade, and the system in his body immediately responded. Unknown virus detected entering the body, and began to analyze. The ingredients are progenitor virus, T. veronica virus, G virus. Isn't this the Ouroboros virus? Luo Guang was shocked when he looked at the analysis of the virus. If he hadn't killed Wesker himself, he would have thought that the other party had resurrected. Luo Guang thought of the Ouroboros virus he was still developing. Although the name of the Ouroboros virus he was studying came from the game, Wesker in the game had to inject inhibitors every day after using the Ouroboros virus, which was basically a defective product. Therefore, he would not copy Wesker's design, but incorporated his own understanding. Now he is still adjusting it to the best state, so the research and development has not been completed yet. Wait, the gene fragment of this G virus is different from the ordinary version, and it also has the gene of the Plaka parasite. Luo Guang continued to read the analysis, thinking about the problem in his mind, and still controlling the enemy he attacked. As a result, he found that the enemy did not speak because he was not pretending to be cold or had a clear division of labor, so there was no need to communicate. The tongue of the controlled enemy was actually pulled out, and his brain was basically blank. He could only loop a command, and naturally he could not let the other party reveal information to him. Knowing that these people had Plaka parasite genes in their bodies, he thought of the Plaka parasite zombies he had encountered, which meant that these people were also controlled by someone before. In this way, what he did must have been discovered by someone, so he immediately asked his clone to use his mobile phone to contact the assault team that was already on standby outside and tell them the location of the dark room. Then, he turned his head to check the cells on the left one by one, and the controlled enemy looked at the cells on the right, looking for Shirley and Kara in two ways. There was no surveillance equipment here either, so he changed back to his own appearance and successfully found Shirley, but he couldn't find Kara after searching all the cells. After confirming this, he killed the enemy he controlled, took off his bulletproof vest, and took away his weapon. Shirley was awakened by Luo Guang and turned her head to look at her face in a daze. He thought that his face was dirty and the other party couldn't recognize him, so he said, "I am Luo Guang, I am here to save you. Where is Kara?" Shirley's body shook for a while, and suddenly she cried and hugged him. She was broken into by someone, and there was nowhere to escape in that confined space. She could only look at the bad guys approaching her in despair. After that, she was knocked unconscious, and when she woke up, she kept listening to the wailing of the homeless people, which made her even more scared. When Luo Guang was carried in by the enemy, the homeless people didn't shout because they were tired of shouting. After they were imprisoned, they were given very little food and drink every day, so naturally they didn't have the strength to shout. Seeing new people coming in and enjoying the same treatment as them, the hearts that had been twisted by fear even gave birth to a trace of pleasure. Shirley was actually awake at the time, but she heard the footsteps and pretended to sleep with her back to the door to cover up her fear. Because Shirley, who was pretending to sleep, trembled all over as he approached, Luo Guang actually knew that she was pretending to sleep, but he just couldn't bear to tear open the fragile defense line she had built. He patted Shirley's back gently and asked again, Where is Kara? I didn't see her in other cells. Where was she taken? Shirley sniffed and replied, I don't know, I was knocked unconscious and woke up here. At this point, although the wound had recovered as before, the place where she was hit began to hurt again. Okay, put on this bulletproof vest and follow me. Let's go find Kara together. Luo Guang didn't rescue Shirley first, because Kara was in the same dangerous situation. Moreover, in Simmons' heart, Kara was much more important than Shirley. He still hoped that this incident could be done perfectly, and Simmons would definitely meet him in person. Shirley was also shocked when she heard this, but she still cheered up, wearing an ill-fitting bulletproof vest, and followed Luo Guang to save her friend. When they left the prison area, he heard gunshots. It was the assault team that opened the secret passage and rushed in. Because the team had seen the video of the enemy's assault, they knew that the enemy was wearing bulletproof vests and was not afraid of death, so they brought automatic shotguns that fired 18.5 mm armor-piercing single-headed bullets. Luo Guang immediately loudly stated his identity and attacked the enemy from behind, while Shirley hid in the bunker to help him watch behind. Although he missed the opportunity to sneak attack, his shooting skills were accurate enough and still caused a lot of casualties to the enemy. This basement itself was not too big, only slightly larger than the surface, and there were not many enemies, less than the number of those who attacked the institute. Seeing this, Luo Guang guessed whether Kara and Shirley were imprisoned separately. If that's the case, it's going to be troublesome. But no matter what, he had to first eliminate the enemies and escort Shirley away before talking about other things. Although he shouted our people, Luo Guang did not leave immediately after dealing with all the enemies. Instead, he said the code he had decided on and waited for the other party to respond before starting his round. Luo Guang asked the other party to send a team to escort Shirley away, and he continued to explore here. The layout of the basement was roughly a cross structure. The opposite direction of the prison cell led to a small research room. On the operating table was a dead homeless man, whose body had also undergone a small mutation. As for the opposite direction of the stairs where he was brought down, there was only an empty house except for a few utility rooms with bottles and jars of research equipment. Luo Guang glanced around and saw a round manhole cover. Normally, the basement drain would use a square fence, and the municipal government would not build the sewer entrance in someone's basement, so this manhole cover might have a problem. Luo Guang opened the manhole cover and listened carefully with the idea of taking a look, but he did not hear the sound of water flowing. He first asked the members of the assault team to seal off the scene and contact the organization for support. He climbed down after making arrangements. There is only one road below, not the sewer. Going inside, there is a heavy iron door at the end. He filled the keyhole with hardened armor that can change its shape at any time, and after adjusting the shape, he really opened the door for him. The iron door made a creaking sound, which was very harsh. A huge pupa appeared in front of him, attracting all his attention. C-Virus Luo Guang finally understood when he saw this. It is very likely that the enemy had this thing in his body before, so this incident may be directed and acted by Kara herself. The G-virus gene fragment in the unknown virus is so special because it uses the mutated version in Shirley's body. However, although the current mutation is exactly the same as the C-virus in the game, Luo Guang did not dare to take it lightly. After all, this C-virus is different from the game. There are mixed gene fragments of the Caprica parasite in it, and combined with the class control ability of the T. Veronica virus, so the enemies outside are all controlled. The combat effectiveness is much lower than when attacking the research institute. It is very likely that the enemy's controller is mutating and evolving, so he has no time to command his subordinates. Luo Guang felt that the guy in the pupa in front of him might be the leader of the enemy. This pupa was beating slowly like a human heart, and he could not confirm when the thing inside the pupa would mutate completely. In any case, he retracted his gaze and prepared to confirm whether there were any weapons in the room. He wanted to smash the enemy who had not yet mutated. The weapons he picked up before had been emptied of bullets, and this place would soon be taken over by the X organization, so he didn't want to use hardened armor as a weapon, otherwise it would be difficult to write a report at that time. As for how he opened the iron door, he could use the excuse that the other party did not lock the door. Anyway, he was the only one who came down. As a result, he did not see a handy weapon, but saw a familiar set of clothes. In the game Resident Evil 6, there are two Adas, one real and one fake, and the one wearing a blue backless deep V dress and a red scarf is the fake Ada, whose real name is Kara Radames. This made him stop thinking about smashing the pupa. Just as Luo Guang was thinking about how to solve the problem caused by Kara, the huge insect pupa began to beat faster and faster, and the creature inside seemed to be ready to break out of the pupa. He knew who was inside. Even if his arrival changed the plot and it was not Kara inside, he was still confident that he could easily deal with a new biochemical monster. Moreover, the environment here was small, so he could use the terrain to trap the opponent, and then call for support to feed the enemy with bullets. The insect pupa split in the middle and split into two petals, and a graceful figure slid out of the ugly insect pupa. Although there was mucus on her face, Luo Guang still recognized that it was Ada's delicate face. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting me out.